adventures, starting with American TV series. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26. Poor Leonard. In the end, Sheldon could only follow Locke and the others towards the museum, his face sullen. He couldn't help but mutter along the way, "I'm completely disappointed in America. Seeing a child as adorable as mine being threatened by bad guys, not a single one called 911, yes, you should have called 911. I'm planning on selling you to Africa. What do you think of that idea?" Locke rolled his eyes at Sheldon. "Oh my God, I don't want to go to Africa. I might die of malaria or Marburg virus," Sheldon screamed in fear. "Locke, stop scaring Sheldon," Linda, watching everyone's gazes turn in her direction, quickly reassured Sheldon. "He's just trying to scare you." "Really?" Sheldon stared at Locke with a wary look. "You believe all that?" Peggy glanced at Sheldon with disdain. After a few encounters, Peggy's impression of young Sheldon plummeted. Young Sheldon couldn't help but retort, "It's possible he'd do that. He's an orphan. Who knows if any of the people he grew up with have become traffickers." "Let's get going." Locke, no longer willing to deal with Sheldon, took the lead. After finishing the museum tour, the group, at Peggy's request, arrived at the zero-gravity experience hall. "Are you really not going in? This is an experience not many people get to experience," Locke glanced at Sheldon. "Forget it. If that machine breaks down, I'll be shattered by the chaotic magnetic forces, and turned into a pile of space junk. You're too timid." "What's there to be afraid of?" Locke said. Sheldon shook his head firmly. If you were living in the internet age 20 years from now, he'd probably declare loudly that he was being steady, not timid. Seeing young Sheldon acting awkwardly again, Locke knew that ordinary methods wouldn't work. Fortunately, the Big Bang Theory had taught him many ways to deal with Sheldon. He quickly came up with a plan. "Sheldon, I remember you saying you loved Spock from Star Trek." "Yes, he's half human, half Vulcan, and he served as the science officer and first officer on the Starship Enterprise." Speaking of his favorite character, Sheldon was clearly excited. Peggy, however, could tell from the smirk on Locke's face and couldn't help but wonder how Locke would convince young Sheldon. Locke continued, "So, do you think Spock would stay on the planet forever because he was afraid of a ship malfunction?" "Of course not. He was a perfect combination of courage and wisdom. He would never be stopped by fear." "Would you be afraid to enter the zero-gravity chamber?" "Of course not." "Well, you've convinced me. It seems you have a way of dealing with Sheldon," Peggy whispered in Locke's ear with a smile. "If you become a mother and raise a child for a few years, you'll know how to handle him." Locke bluntly stated the truth. Sheldon had always been a giant baby. Whether dealing with a 10-year-old or a 30-year-old, the same approach should apply to a child. The three of them lined up together. When it was their turn, they changed into specialized clothing under the guidance of the staff and entered the zero-gravity chamber. With the sound of the machine and a dizzying spin, Locke felt his body gradually escape the influence of gravity until it completely disappeared. Gently pushing against the wall, Locke was launched into the air by the reaction force, slowly soaring to the other side. The experience was quite novel. "Is this similar to the feeling of flying? Only I can't learn magic that allows me to fly right now," Locke thought, glancing at Peggy. With a light tap of her toes, she leaped from the floor, her ethereal form spinning in the air, seemingly having a blast. When Locke turned his gaze to Sheldon, he found him floating in midair, frantically trying to grab onto something, his face filled with terror as he cried out, "I'm trapped by the evil zero-gravity demon. Locke, come save me." "Ha ha ha." Locke and Peggy laughed heartily at little Sheldon's clumsy, panicked look. As the three of them emerged from the zero-gravity experience hall, little Sheldon was trembling all over, barely holding himself together with Locke's support, leaving Peggy with a look of disgust. "Okay, Peggy, considering Sheldon's nerves, it's a good thing he didn't wet his pants right there," Locke reassured the little boy, saying, "Sheldon, are you okay? Do you want to go to the medical center here?" "No, I'm just a little dizzy. It's normal. I don't want to go somewhere full of infectious germs," Sheldon said quickly. "Those patients would infect me." "Interesting. It seems you have a serious mysophobia," a charming voice called from the side. "Sheldon is a bit of a germaphobe," Locke casually retorted. Turning around, he couldn't help but be slightly taken aback, thinking what a coincidence it was to run into female Sheldon here. It's not germophobia, I'm just responsible for my own life, Sheldon retorted bluntly. I understand your pursuit of a hygienic and safe environment. Let me introduce myself. I'm Beverly Hofstadter, a PhD in neuroscience, human behavior, and sociology, and a world-class expert in childcare. Sure enough, after hearing her introduction, Locke was completely certain that the woman before him was the mother of Sheldon's future roommate, Leonard. A woman with a personality very similar to Sheldon's, a true female Sheldon. My name is Sheldon Lee Cooper. I'm in high school and sometimes audit my grandma's boyfriend's classes at the university. He's a visiting professor at the University of Texas at Austin. Sheldon introduced himself. A high school student? You seem quite intelligent. What's your IQ? Beverly was clearly captivated by Sheldon's introduction. 187, Sheldon puffed out his chest proudly. Hell, Peggy pouted, about to say something, but Locke grabbed her. He didn't want Beverly to target her. It's quite high indeed. It reminds me of a study on brain quirks in highly intelligent people. If possible, could you? Oh, by the way, this requires your guardian's consent. Beverly looked at Linda beside her. Are you his mother? I'd like to talk to you about getting Sheldon's brain scan. No, I'd like to. Before Linda could finish, Sheldon agreed. He'd wanted a brain scan for a long time, but Mary had always disagreed. Excellent, what do you think, Mom? Beverly looked at Linda. I'm just a friend of Sheldon's mother, Linda said. Okay, then, could you take me to meet Sheldon's parents? Beverly asked as if it was a matter of course. Compared to the opportunity to study a rare example like Sheldon, this ordinary exhibition was nothing. Mom, at this time, a little boy beside Beverly couldn't help but shake Beverly's arm. He had finally gotten the opportunity to attend this expo, but Beverly just lowered her head and gave little Leonard a cold look, which immediately scared him so much that he shrank his head like a quail and dared not say a word. Then let's talk about going to see Sheldon's mother together, Beverly said. So. It must be said that as a neurologist, Beverly has a strong grasp of psychology. In just a few words, she made Linda agree to take little Sheldon to find Mary. Locke didn't want to have too much contact with the other party, so he said, in this case, I will take Peggy to continue playing, and we will meet at the agreed place at noon. No problem, then please take care of Peggy. Linda was quite relieved about Locke. Locke nodded, then glanced at little Leonard. Dr. Beverly, I think your son would like to play a little longer. If you don't mind, he can come with us. Interesting. Unexpectedly, Beverly looked at Locke after hearing this. You seem to know me. Somewhat, Locke said. I've read some of your papers and books. I see. Beverly nodded in understanding. No problem. I don't think anyone would want to commit a crime because of him. Let's just let him come with you. Let's go, my little cutie. Beverly's dismissive words hit Leonard hard. He was visibly jealous of Beverly calling Sheldon cutie. Beverly hadn't called him cutie once in all those years. He was Beverly's biological son. But the thought of continuing the fun brightened his mood. Poor Leonard. Thanks to Beverly's parenting strategies, he had already begun to learn to self-resolve his problems at the age of 10. No wonder he would achieve such a high level of acquired optimism in the future. Chapter 27 Cafe. Locke breathed a sigh of relief after Beverly walked away, prompting Peggy to ask, you seem a little scared of her. No one likes being around someone who's constantly analyzing people. Locke watched Sheldon and Beverly walk away, chatting happily. He hadn't realized that, because of him, they'd met over a decade before the Big Bang Theory. Mary was probably going to have a headache. As they disappeared into the crowd, Locke looked at little Leonard and wondered if Beverly's book, The Helpless Man, had been published by then. He couldn't imagine having a mother like that. It was already a good thing Leonard wasn't mentally twisted and turning into a psychopathic murderer. Regardless, Locke had to continue being the boss, playing with the two little ones. Luckily, little Leonard was much easier to deal with than little Sheldon. You're Leonard, right? I'm Locke Lee, and this is Peggy. Let's continue strolling around. Are there any places you'd like to go? Oh, no. I'll just follow you, little Leonard replied quietly, stealing a glance at Peggy. Seeing his expression, Locke smiled. Okay, let's go, Locke, let's go to the Rocket Launch Experience Hall. Seeing Linda had also left, Peggy mentioned the attraction she was extremely excited about, which Linda had just rejected on the grounds that she was too young. You can give it a try, Leonard, are you okay with it? Yeah, I think I'm fine, Leonard said, a little worried and guilty. If you're scared, you can just watch us play from the side, Peggy said. Leonard nodded, and the three of them set off for the Launch Gravity Experience Hall. The so-called Launch Gravity Experience Hall was all white, with a spherical launch pad at the base and a cylindrical center, rising 380 meters high, reaching into the sky. Locke bought drinks from the vending machine at the entrance, and the three of them chatted while partying. Because there were so many people, the line was quite long, and the three of them waited for over 20 minutes before their turn arrived. The rocket launch experience essentially involves entering the cabin and experiencing the sensation of soaring off the launch pad at tremendous acceleration. Worried that Peggy wouldn't be able to handle it, he glanced at her and Leonard and said, "Are you sure everything's okay?" Of course, large-scale amusement rides like these must meet safety standards when they're built. If I remember correctly, this vertical lift ride requires participants to be between the ages of 9 and 60 and have no pre-existing medical conditions, Peggy calmly replied. In other words, as long as you meet the requirements, there's nothing wrong with it. You don't have to worry about us. Well, it seems our Miss Know-It-All knows a lot, Locke said with a smile. With such thorough preparation, it seemed Peggy had been eager to experience it for a while. Peggy rolled her eyes at Locke and turned away, ignoring him. The nickname Know-It-All isn't considered a good nickname in Europe and America, much like Hermione being called Know-It-All in the Harry Potter films. It's actually a form of derision, and she herself felt wronged by the nickname. However, Eastern audiences consider it a title to be proud of. When it was the three's turn, they were escorted by staff into their tight spacesuits and entered the cabin. The interior walls of the cabin were lined with cushioning airbags, making the space much smaller than it appeared from the outside. Locke sat in the middle, with Peggy and Leonard flanking him. They fastened their safety harnesses as instructed. As the launch countdown reached 0 and the magnetic lifters closed, the cabin began to experience a steady upward thrust. The pressure of the acceleration pinned the three men to their reclining seats. As the speed increased, the cabin began to sway slightly, and Locke soon heard Peggy and Leonard's screams. In just 6 seconds, the cabin climbed 360 meters. The whole experience was truly thrilling. Perhaps it was psychological, but afterward, Locke strained his neck, finally feeling a sense of relief. Peggy breathed a sigh of relief, holding Locke with one hand and placing the other on her chest, looking still in shock. As for Leonard, he struggled to get out of his seat, barely able to stand, and needed help from a staff member to exit the cabin. Seeing Leonard's expression, Locke could only suggest they go to a nearby cafe for a break. Pushing open the brown-framed glass door, Locke and the other two entered. The cafe's decor was casual, with rows of bookshelves on the walls and oak floors. Not many customers were there, and a waitress was wiping cups behind the bar. Hearing the doorbell, the waitress said, "Welcome, what would you like to drink?" The three of them ordered coffee. Leonard emphasized no milk, as he was lactose intolerant and dairy products caused him to fart. After ordering, the three of them settled into a conversation. Locke and Peggy did most of the talking, with Leonard only occasionally interjecting. As they talked, the waitress brought the coffee. The colorful glazed ceramic mugs were adorned with cute little animals, and Peggy couldn't put them down. "These mugs are pretty," Peggy said, examining her indigo Persian cat mug with a hint of delight. The clerk introduced them appropriately. These cups were custom made by our manager. There are over 100 designs, each featuring a different animal, so every customer can find their own coffee cup. If requested, they can take their favorite cup home for $20. "It seems your boss is quite good at business," Locke said with a smile, noting that Peggy and Leonard were clearly interested, yet a bit hesitant about the price. Peggy looked at the Persian cat printed on the cup, elegant yet lazy and playful, and then looked at Locke with a hint of anticipation. Knowing that Peggy was a little tempted, Locke smiled and rubbed Peggy's head. "If you like it, keep it. I'll have the clerk pack it for you later, okay?" Peggy nodded, happily taking another sip of her coffee. "Leonard, why don't you pick one too? Consider it a gift from me." "Really?" Leonard was also a little surprised. He also liked the cup in his hand, but he was a little hesitant. "Don't worry, Locke's a millionaire, he wouldn't need a small fortune." Peggy knew Locke had made a fortune from the stock market in the past year, and his outfit had been custom-made. He looked less like an orphan and more like a wealthy child. "Thank you very much," Leonard said politely. He felt that even though his mother had completely ignored him and was solely focused on Sheldon, whom he had just met, it was nice to meet these two new friends, especially Peggy, who was so adorable. The three of them rested in the cafe for a while, and Leonard had almost recovered. When they paid the bill and left, Peggy and Leonard were still holding their newly acquired coffee cups. Checking his watch, Locke realized it was almost time. The three of them headed towards the agreed meeting place. From a distance, they spotted Mary, Linda, and the others, but George and his son were nowhere to be seen. He wondered if they were having fun somewhere. After coming closer and saying hello, Locke saw Mary's expression, and it seemed that the discussion with Beverly was not very pleasant. However, little Sheldon seemed very excited and was still chatting with Beverly. "You are finally here. I was a little bored." Seeing Peggy, Missy ran over happily and shook her hand. Mary used her age as an excuse to forbid her from playing those more dangerous entertainment projects. The key point was that after Beverly and little Sheldon came over, she had to endure little Sheldon's endless chatter and Beverly's comparison between her and little Sheldon. After listening to Peggy talk about the projects they had played, Missy's envy was beyond words. "Why don't I go with you this afternoon? Let's wait for Mr. Cooper to come over and discuss this matter during dinner," Locke said when he saw George and his son from a distance. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Additional System Functions. The two, or rather, three, families visited for 2.5 days. After confirming that little Sheldon was planning to attend college next year, Beverly strongly recommended Princeton University for him. Locke, realizing that Beverly was also a professor at Princeton, took the opportunity to express his desire for Princeton and said he and Peggy would visit the university in a few days. The trip to Princeton during the summer vacation had been planned long ago. Linda and Peggy were there to explore and consider whether Peggy should attend college there, while Locke was there to secure letters of recommendation to ensure his admission. American universities were originally designed for the upper class, and the admissions criteria are very much in keeping with the aristocracy. In a previous life, many people despised the Eastern nations' focus on grades, calling it a struggle to get into a single place, often contrasting it with the American university system's focus on merit. The so-called quality-first approach doesn't judge heroes by their grades, but those who truly understand the situation know that to be a hero, one must either be rich or powerful, or, to use a common phrase, financially powerful. Among these financially powerful heroes, the most prominent are the descendants of the super-rich. Their super-rich ancestors, or the first generation of the wealthy, established foundations early on and used them to donate money to top universities, building buildings and expensive educational equipment, becoming their top donors. When the time came for these frontline heroes to attend college, even if they had done nothing, even if their high school grades were abysmal and they spent their days indulging in alcohol, they could easily get into top-tier schools, where countless others, despite their best efforts, could never get in, becoming the epitome of life's winners. To use a phrase that once appeared online in the future, the wealth and social status accumulated by generations of hard work are not as good as yours, accumulated over a decade of hard work. It's the epitome of a lifetime of struggle yet still failing to match their starting point. Parents of lesser-known, second-tier heroes donate a meager sum of hundreds of thousands of dollars to prestigious universities, becoming members of their endowment committees. This ensures that when their children apply, the admissions office prioritizes them. Parents also arrange for their children to take college prep courses, honors courses, and participate in niche sports that reflect talent, such as equestrianism and sailing. Whether these niche sports reflect talent is crucial. The key is that most students don't even have the money to buy the equipment. After this process of screening, the top-tier and second-tier heroes with the most money win. The next spots will be filled by mutants like Sheldon and Peggy. After all, in the United States, the rich rely on money, while the poor rely on mutations. This leaves very few spots for ordinary students. The remaining ordinary students, lacking both the wealth and the super-intelligence of their mutations, must strive to take the SAT, a test of academic aptitude. After all this twist and turn, the situation revolved around the seemingly familiar meritocracy. However, with so many heroes already having made it to the other side, the number of passes to the narrow bridge had dwindled significantly. As an orphan in this life, Locke wasn't a hero blessed with wealth. Fortunately, he had system cheats, but he still needed to go through the process and employ various methods to increase his chances of passing. He prepared by joining the mathematical Olympiad team, the baseball team, and taking preparatory courses for college. However, to be on the safe side, he needed strong letters of recommendation. He had already secured a principal and teachers at his own school, and even consulted Dr. Sturgis, but his letters of recommendation weren't enough for Princeton University. These letters weren't good enough to carry the weight of top universities, and they wouldn't be enough to make the final decision. Therefore, he considered visiting Princeton University to get to know the professors there, especially those in the mathematics department, and see if he could get their letters of recommendation. A recommendation letter from a professor at your school carries considerable weight. Even if a math professor takes notice, it's practically guaranteed admission, much like preferential treatment for those admitted to graduate school at your school. The interviewer also needs to be considered. A female interviewer would be even better. It was at this point that Locke realized his charm had paid off. Having a handsome face was still very useful. After meeting Sheldon, they hadn't seen many opportunities to see each other often. After all, the school in Dallas was quite a distance from Sheldon's home, so they usually kept in touch online. The three of them planned to drive all the way to Princeton. The distance was over 2,000 kilometers, and the drive would take over 20 hours. Fortunately, with Locke and Linda taking turns driving, they wouldn't be too tired. The trip was planned to take 3 days each way, giving them plenty of time and rest along the way. You have a deep understanding of mathematics. I welcome you to Princeton in the future. Here's my letter of recommendation. I'll also tell a few friends about you, a man in his 50s with some graying hair said to Locke in a Princeton office. Thank you, Dr. Gates, Locke said with a smile, thanking the man before him. Since arriving at Princeton University, he had begun contacting professors there. Thanks to Beverly's introductions and his own impressive performance, he had successfully gained their favor and received several prestigious letters of recommendation. His goal had been achieved. Given the current situation, admission next year was almost certain. As for Peggy, she was touring the area with Linda. She wasn't worried about admissions. Even these top universities would beg for a young prodigy like her. Her visit was more about sightseeing, exploring Princeton with Linda, and considering whether to enroll Peggy there next year. After leaving Dr. Gates' office, Locke prepared to visit Beverly's home. After all, thanks to Beverly, he had been able to more easily connect with influential professors at Princeton. Dr. Gates, in particular, was very impressed with Locke and even suggested that Locke could pursue graduate studies with him, seemingly considering Locke as a future student. To facilitate his travels, Locke rented a car and returned to the hotel to pick up the gifts he had prepared before heading to Beverly's house. On the way, Locke paused to consider the new system changes. After reaching 200 intelligence points, 2 new features were added. One was a storage space, essential for time travelers. While only a small 1 cubic meter, it could hold a considerable amount of items and could be expanded with potential points. Locke was considering acquiring some firearms for self-defense. With the help of meditation, he wouldn't have to constantly visit the shooting range, allowing him to continuously practice his firearms skills. Although he hadn't focused much on this, he had already earned more than half the experience points for the intermediate level. At this rate, reaching the advanced level would only take a year at most. In the United States, having a gun brought greater peace of mind. He could also acquire a longsword and a dagger. These cold weapons were collected by many American enthusiasts and could be used in conjunction with his cold weapon skills for specific situations. Another change was the addition of a secondary class in addition to the primary class. According to the introduction, this profession cannot trigger quests, but if you achieve the performance required by the profession, achieve certain achievements, and increase your reputation, you will also be rewarded with potential points. This is equivalent to another way to earn potential points. Locke's first thought was to choose magician as his second profession. However, after carefully considering the conditions for obtaining potential points, he quickly rejected the idea. Achievements are easy to achieve, but the key is reputation. Magicians in this world need to hide themselves from ordinary people, which means that their reputation as magicians cannot be widely spread. As a result, the potential points earned will inevitably be greatly reduced, so it is better to consider another profession. Chapter 29. More patient than Gujian. The Hofstadter home wasn't far from Princeton University, and he'd already announced a visit by phone, so the Hofstadters and Leonard were both home. Hello, Dr. Hofstadter. Hello, Locke. Leonard's father was easygoing, giving Locke a warm hug and patting him on the back. You're welcome. I told you to call me Alfred. Okay, Alfred, Locke said readily. After greeting Leonard's father, Locke nodded to Beverly. Knowing that she, like Sheldon, was a germaphobe, he didn't extend a handshake. "Hello, Dr. Beverly Hofstadter." After the greetings, Locke took out the gift he'd prepared. Gifts are always necessary when visiting someone, whether in the East or the West. "Hello, Locke. I hope you've successfully persuaded Peggy to join my research," Beverly said directly. "I'm sorry, I've discussed this with him, and neither Linda nor Peggy has any intention of joining your research. You should contact Sheldon, he's very excited." Locke made an apologetic gesture and decisively sold little Sheldon. "While I'm confident I can convince Sheldon and his mother, having another experimental sample will increase the accuracy of the experiment. This is a great experiment for the advancement of science. Apologies. After all, we must abide by social rules and not force others to participate in experiments," Locke emphasized. After Linda brought Peggy to Princeton, Beverly learned of her genius and tried to recruit her into her research. But Peggy, unlike Sheldon, had no interest in being a test subject, and Linda was naturally even more reluctant, repeatedly rejecting Beverly's requests. As for little Sheldon, it was a matter of willingness. The only problem was Mary. It all depended on Beverly's ability to convince her, and Locke had no say in the matter. "Everyone knows about your experiment," Leonard's father muttered. "That's normal," Beverly said, not noticing the sarcasm in her husband's words. She gave him a blank look. "Everyone knows I'm a renowned neuroscientist and a world-class expert on parenting and child development. My books are bestsellers worldwide, so there's no need to emphasize this well-known fact." Leonard's father was speechless after being confronted. Leonard was used to this. He had a good impression of Locke and greeted him warmly. "What would you like? Tea, coffee, or a Coke?" "Tea will be fine," Locke smiled. Honestly, if it weren't for thanking Beverly for her help, he wouldn't have wanted to visit. Beverly was simply not easy to get along with, while Leonard's father was very kind and gracious. After Locke visited numerous professors, Beverly realized that Locke's IQ was comparable to Peggy and Sheldon's. From then on, Beverly treated him like a test subject. Whenever he spoke to Beverly, Locke would be wary of her using psychological analysis to analyze him. If he hadn't gotten to know Beverly well enough thanks to the Big Bang Theory, he'd have been led astray by her. Her specialty is breaking people down, allowing her to better understand their psychology. In the Big Bang Theory, Beverly and Penny's first meeting was a brief climb up the stairs, and she had a meltdown. Then, she bluntly told Leonard that if he wanted to have sex with her, he just had to use the same cologne as Penny's father. It's unclear whether Leonard used that cologne, but he went to comfort Penny that night. If he hadn't let that slip, angering her, he might have been able to have a relationship with her. Sure enough, Beverly quickly turned her attention to Locke. "Since Peggy is unwilling, I wonder if you are willing to contribute to science. Regarding this matter, I believe my attitude is very clear. I am willing to contribute to science in my own way." "Your own way," Beverly said. "Tell me about it. I am ready to make mathematics my major subject." "Mathematics is the mother of many sciences. Promoting the progress of mathematics is my goal." This answer made Beverly nod. In the scientific community, the importance of mathematics is recognized. The important theories of many disciplines must be supported by mathematics. The progress of mathematics will inevitably promote the progress of many disciplines. Of course, Locke knew he couldn't let the other party continue to pester him, so he simply changed the subject. "Dr. Hofstadter, since you're an expert in parenting and child development, you should also know that treating Leonard so harshly from a young age will definitely have a negative impact on him. Your idea is interesting." Beverly raised her glasses. "But I don't think there's anything wrong with it. His brother and sister went through the same parenting method, and now they're both top students at Harvard. Excellent grades don't mean there's no mental health problem," Locke said. "And I think Leonard's grades are also very good. The problem is his personality. He's clearly too weak. That just shows he's not good enough," Beverly deadpanned. "I believe truly outstanding people can control their minds." "Sure enough, that doesn't make sense," Locke sighed inwardly, knowing that a few words alone would not change Beverly, who was as stubborn as Sheldon. Amy in the Big Bang Theory spent 5 years trying to initially change Sheldon. Locke didn't have Amy's expertise and skills, nor did he have the time and energy. There was a momentary pause, but Leonard came over with a tray and handed Locke the tea. "Your tea." "Thank you, Leonard." "Dad, yours." "Thank you," Alfred said, smiling. When it was Beverly's turn, Leonard was noticeably nervous. "Mom, yours." Sure enough, Locke then witnessed a classic scene from The Big Bang Theory. Oolong tea, yes. Loose, not tea bags, yes. Stirred for 3 minutes, yes. 2% milk, yes. Heated separately, yes. Yes. A spoonful of sugar, yes. Raw sugar, yes. What took you so long? Beverly complained again, making Leonard instantly nervous. Beverly took a sip of the tea Leonard offered her and said unhappily, "It's cold." "I guess we know why." Leonard could only smile wryly and return the tea. "I'll make you a new one." He'd thought this scene was funny on TV, but now that it was happening, Locke couldn't help but look at Leonard with pity. With so many demands, it was difficult to complete them in a timely manner, and delays were inevitable. And at most, the temperature was only slightly lower. It was just Beverly's overly sensitive nature, coupled with Sheldon's severe obsessive-compulsive disorder, that led to her complaints in the end. After Leonard left, Beverly shook her head. Such a simple thing as making tea, and he still has problems after all this time. "I don't know how to teach him." Locke was speechless, thinking Leonard was truly pathetic. Then he noticed Alfred's expression. He seemed to empathize. It seemed like he had it tough, too. No wonder he'd even used Leonard's hug machine, but to have endured this long, in some ways. He was even more patient than Gao Jian, the king of you. Chapter 30, Forging the Ring. After leaving Leonard's house, Locke returned to his hotel and said goodbye to Peggy and Linda. After almost a week in Princeton, the mother and daughter had already explored the area thoroughly, and it was time to return. However, Locke didn't go with them. He had to go to New York to meet Balthazar and learn magic from him. Since first meeting Balthazar last Christmas, Locke had been studying magic for over 6 months, and his meditation technique had barely reached the intermediate level a week ago. He had also learned a few basic spells, mostly by rote learning through the system. In terms of his understanding of magic, he was still a beginner and needed to write to Balthazar frequently for advice. But letters were no match for face-to-face instruction, so Locke planned to stay in New York for the entire summer, learning more from Balthazar. Ding-ling-ling, the doorbell rang, and Locke arrived at Balthazar's antique shop again. "Welcome." "It's you?" Balthazar glanced at Locke standing at the door. "Your place is still so messy. Can't you tidy it up?" Locke couldn't help but complain, glancing around. He wasn't a particularly diligent person, but the chaos here still challenged Locke's understanding. "That's not your concern." Balthazar glanced at Locke. "My time is precious. I have to help take care of Dave in 2 hours." Ever since he confirmed Dave was Merlin's descendant, Balthazar had taken action. Dave was only a newborn, so Balthazar couldn't teach him magic directly. But he couldn't wait to move in next door to Dave's family and become their neighbor. Thanks to Balthazar's deliberate efforts, Dave's parents quickly became friends, and Balthazar took over the responsibility of caring for Dave while they were busy. "Speaking of Dave, I'm a little curious too. How about you take me over to see him later?" Locke suggested. Balthazar considered it for a moment, then nodded. "No problem, but let me see how far you've come." Locke nodded, and Balthazar quickly apparated, leading him to a wasteland on the outskirts of the city. "From your letter, I can see that you're making rapid progress, but I'll have to verify everything before I can say anything," Balthazar said. "Now, perform all the magic you know." "No problem. I only have some basic magical techniques. I've only mastered 7 of the spells in your book." Locke nodded, then began to demonstrate each one before Balthazar. "Your manipulation of elements, or rather molecules, is very proficient, even better than mine." "Well, perfect." After watching, Balthazar's eyes were filled with amazement. "It seems you have great talent, but you lack sufficient experience and guidance. And you still need a magic ring." "A magic ring?" Locke looked at the yellow sapphire ring Balthazar was wearing. "Yes, a magic ring is like a staff. You've probably noticed when you cast magic that controlling magic is difficult. A magic ring can help you better concentrate your magic power and manipulate tiny particles, allowing you to cast spells faster and with greater power," Balthazar said. "A magic ring is extremely important to a magician. It carries a strong personal imprint. Every magician has his or her own ring, which you must find and forge. It will accompany you for a lifetime. A top-notch magic ring can increase your magic speed several times over and reduce your magic power consumption. As for the techniques for forging a magic ring, they are all documented in the magic book I gave you. Now that you've mastered magic, it's time to forge your own. Actually, I've also read about alchemy in the magic book, but the materials needed to forge a top-notch magic ring are not cheap." Locke shrugged helplessly. The most important thing about a magic ring is the gemstone. The larger it is, the more magic power it can withstand, and the purer and more flawless it is, the more efficient it is in channeling magic. Therefore, forging a magic ring requires top-notch gemstones, and these gemstones are often very valuable. Thanks to his gains on the Japanese stock market, Locke's net worth now exceeds $1 million. Gems of the highest purity and size are all world-renowned, often fetching prices exceeding tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars. Of course, there are also unusual magic rings, like the one passed down from Merlin, made of magic gold, a material far more precious than gemstones. Magic gold naturally holds a vast amount of magical power, offering greater efficiency in channeling magic and a greater tolerance for magic, making it even rarer. Balthazar hadn't encountered any other magic gold besides the dragon ring in over 1,000 years. Locke certainly wanted a top-notch magic ring, but achieving this goal quickly was unrealistic. For now, he could only purchase some alchemical materials, practice his alchemical skills under Balthazar's guidance, and craft a durable magic ring. Unwilling to stay at Balthazar's antique shop, Locke booked a luxurious hotel suite. He consulted Balthazar every morning for magic lessons and spent his afternoons reading at the New York City Library. The library boasted a comprehensive selection of books, and he obtained a library card, allowing him to borrow cutting-edge scientific texts at any time. His knowledge base had long surpassed the typical university curriculum, and he now primarily relied on self-study to improve himself. He didn't have to attend classes, and the teachers at school were aware of his situation and didn't impose any restrictions on him. He hadn't skipped a grade, so he wanted to leverage his career to gain more potential points. Therefore, Locke's next 2 weeks in New York were incredibly fulfilling. That was until he received a call from Tang Wei. "My flight is leaving soon and will arrive in New York tomorrow. Can you come pick me up? Have you sorted out all your affairs?" Locke asked. "I have, but I don't have $1 on me right now. If you don't come pick me up, I'll end up living on the streets in New York," Tang Wei said. Locke frowned. He knew Tang Wei had been saving for college for a long time, but her tone didn't sound joking. Could she have spent it all on a school trip these past few days? Graduation had been almost a month since graduation, and as is customary in American high schools, those graduating high school students who had been accepted into college would go on school trips whenever possible. Children from wealthy families have many options for school trips. Besides traveling within the United States, they can also get together in small groups and explore Europe. Children from well-off middle-class families often take their own used cars and embark on spontaneous road trips, experiencing the local customs and cultures of various parts of the country. Children from families struggling with college tuition don't have this luxury. They often choose to find a job, not just to cover tuition but also to save for living expenses. Growing up in the East Country, Tang Wei had a habit of saving. After receiving her acceptance letter from Columbia University, she began working part-time as a gambling partner at a casino to cover her tuition and living expenses. After just a few days, she met Locke, who offered to help with her tuition and living expenses. However, even with Locke's promise to cover her tuition and living expenses, Tang Wei wouldn't spend her own money recklessly, nor would she just sit back and wait for him to send her money. She had originally planned to work part-time during the summer to save some money while preparing for college by following the school's textbook list. Locke, also absorbed in magic and studying, didn't urge her to come to New York to be with him. She was quite serious about her studies, knowing it was the surest way to change her destiny. But just before she was due to arrive in New York, problems arose at home. Chapter 31, Settling Down. Tang Wei's father had abandoned her mother years earlier and came to the United States to work hard. He actually built a fortune and later married a local Chinese woman. However, she became pregnant and suffered complications during childbirth, resulting in both her and her husband's death. It was then that Tang Wei's father realized Tang Wei and brought her to the United States. However, he subsequently fell into alcoholism and gambling, squandering much of the family fortune over the years and struggling to survive by working as a chef in a casino hotel. Tang Wei was forced to rely on herself, taking on odd jobs to support herself early on. She even earned most of her high school tuition through tutoring and odd jobs. Recently, Tang Wei's father, unable to repay loans, was forced to remortgage their house. He noticed Tang Wei's newly acquired designer clothes and began to question them. Tang Wei remained tight-lipped, but her father overheard a phone call to Locke at home, revealing that she had hooked up with a wealthy man. Tang Wei's father, already mired in debt, emboldened by the news. He secretly sold off many of the luxury goods Locke had bought for Tang Wei and stole $5,000 that Tang Wei had been saving. This action ignited a long simmering conflict between father and daughter, leading to a heated argument between Tang Wei and his father. Tang Wei then borrowed money from classmates to secure a ticket to New York. Tang Wei, however, didn't reveal any of this when he met Locke at the airport. Tang Wei had previously said he would arrive in New York sometime later, but now, suddenly, he was arriving early, seemingly penniless. Locke didn't question him. After all, the two of them were now simply sponsor and sponsor, and strictly speaking, they had spent less than a week together face to face. He didn't consider Tang Wei a girlfriend, he defined her as a close female friend. From the moment he acquired the system, Locke had decided he didn't need a girlfriend. These close female friends would fulfill the duties of a girlfriend without burdening Locke with excessive obligations. In short, Locke had been prepared to be a scumbag from the moment he realized he had been reborn, and he was clearly a scumbag. "We'll go to the hotel first." After putting Tang Wei's luggage in the rental car, Locke returned to the driver's seat. "Then I'll find you an apartment near campus." "Apartment?" "The school has assigned dormitories," Tang Wei said. "The dormitories are crowded, so an apartment is more convenient. I can't always stay in a hotel when I see you." Locke glanced at Tang Wei. "Don't worry about the rent." Since Locke had said so, Tang Wei didn't refuse, tacitly accepting Locke's arrangement. Arriving at the hotel and dropping off their luggage, Tang Wei was pulled into Locke's arms before turning around when a force choked him. Locke could only ask the waiter to deliver the meal to the room. He and Tang Wei stayed in the hotel room for the rest of the day. The next day, he and Tang Wei, who had barely recovered, went to Columbia University for a morning tour before going to look at apartments. Renting an apartment in the United States was easy. Locke chose an area within 2 kilometers of Columbia University. Manhattan is one of the most prosperous boroughs, and Columbia University is located there. This shows that although Columbia is a public university, it is not short of money. After showing Tang Wei several locations recommended by real estate agents, Locke finally settled on an apartment in a building, just over 30 square meters in size, with a typical 1-bedroom, 1 living room, and 1 bathroom layout. This neighborhood, with its multi-story buildings and vibrant cultural diversity, is a favorite among young people. Most of the residents are recent graduates or office workers, and the living environment and safety are excellent. After settling on a location, he and Tang Wei bought some furniture and contacted a housekeeping company to clean and tidy up. 2 days later, Locke checked out of his hotel room and moved in with Tang Wei. "Huh? I'm finally done packing." Tang Wei happily surveyed the apartment, placing the last of his clothes in the closet. Sure enough, this was where he would be living for the next 4 years. Leaving the bedroom, he saw Locke leisurely sitting on the sofa, watching TV. "Are you done packing, honey?" Locke smiled as Tang Wei emerged from the bedroom. "It's over." Tang Wei breathed a sigh of relief. It was a relief that Locke had hired a housekeeping company to do a thorough cleaning yesterday, otherwise, he would have been busy until midnight just cleaning. "I need to take a shower, too. I've been busy all day and I'm sweating." "Sure, I ordered takeout." "You can eat after you shower." Locke could cook simple meals, but since he just moved in and the refrigerator was empty, he was too lazy to bother, so he just ordered takeout. Girls usually take a long time to shower, and the takeout had already arrived. Before Locke saw Tang Wei emerge from the bathroom, he urged her to open the pizza box and take a piece. Pizza and bread in the United States are like rice and pasta in the East. Every meal feels missing if you don't eat them. Locke is a big eater, and in addition to the oversized pizza, he also ordered 5 or 6 other dishes, filling the living room table. He was almost finished when he saw Tang Wei, dressed in a yukata, emerge from the bathroom. "Come and eat quickly. It'll get cold any longer," Locke called, handing Tang Wei a slice of pizza. Tang Wei sat down beside Locke, took the pizza, and took a bite. "It tastes good. My favorite pineapple flavor." Pulling the girl into his arms, Locke said, "There's still some time before school starts. What are your plans?" "Let's go to the bookstore tomorrow. I still haven't bought a lot of the books from the school list." Tang Wei laid out his plan. "On the way back, we can buy some food at the convenience store downstairs. I can make some simple meals, but it's a shame that Chinese food isn't easy to prepare in an American apartment." Tang Wei had learned to cook since he was a child in the East Country, But cooking Chinese food usually produces a lot of fumes, which could easily cause misunderstandings among the neighbors and call the fire department. Then, when they doused the house with water, it would damage some of the household's belongings. And then there would be a bill from the fire department shortly afterwards. A single call out by the fire department in the United States can cost $1,000 or $2,000. Locke didn't care about the small amount of money right now, but he didn't want to risk any trouble. Chapter 32, with his handsome face, few people can refuse. Your understanding of magic is already very profound. That's remarkable, Balthazar said to Locke outside New York. All you lack now is experience in performing magic and the accumulation of magical power. I won't be able to teach you much in the future. I've benefited from modern science, Locke said with a smile. And you don't have to flatter me. I don't believe that I, who have only been practicing magic for less than a year, can be independent of your guidance. Haha, it seems you are also a wise man. Balthazar smiled, then suddenly turned serious. He stared at Locke and said, in that case, I have one thing to emphasize again. Magicians must not be exposed to the public eye. Without waiting for Locke to say anything, Balthazar continued, magic is indeed powerful, but only a very small number of people possess magical talent in this world. Moreover, modern weapons still have a great lethality against magicians. My magic can block ordinary bullets. Even some single-person RPGs will only cause me minor injuries after breaking through my magic, but this doesn't mean we can be reckless. Since you're well-versed in science, you're naturally aware of the power of modern weaponry. Not to mention nuclear weapons, even a high-powered missile could kill me. As long as those people are determined to take us seriously, the price they'll pay for dealing with any magician will be within their means. I understand. I won't reveal my identity as a magician. Locke understood Balthazar's words. Ultimately, even if this world possesses supernatural powers, it's still classified as a low magic world at best. In such a world, supernatural powers simply can't hold a candle to modern nations. Due to the limitations of the world, the upper limit of magic power is limited. Coupled with the scarcity of magicians, they can compete with a well-trained military equipped with sophisticated surveillance and communication methods and weapons of mass destruction. Even if one possesses supernatural powers, they can only hide themselves as much as possible to avoid being targeted and used as a guinea pig by bigwigs. With thousands of years of life experience, Balthazar could tell Locke had taken his words to heart, and he felt relieved. Well, your summer vacation is almost over, isn't it? School starts in just over a week, Locke said. I should be flying back to Dallas tomorrow afternoon. Excellent. If you have any questions, you can write me a secret letter as usual, Balthazar said. Barring any unexpected events, I'll be staying in New York for the next few years. I understand. I'll probably be attending Princeton next year, which is very close to New York, so I'll be able to ask you for advice often then. Balthazar wasn't surprised. According to the magical principles of this world, becoming a magician requires a high IQ. Otherwise, even if one is lucky enough to get started, they wouldn't be able to easily understand and master the complexities of magic. In the low magic world, don't dream of accumulating vast amounts of magic power and performing miracles, because the world limits the upper limit of one's magic power. Due to this world's limitations, even though Balthazar has lived for over 1,000 years, his magic power stopped growing long ago. Over these years, he has focused more on mastering and developing various types of magic. If one's intelligence is insufficient, even if one is lucky enough to get started, they might only be able to learn simple, elementary magic. After saying goodbye to Balthazar, Locke returned to Tang Wei's apartment. Pushing the door open, he found her sitting at the desk in the hall, reading. Noticing the door open, she turned to see Locke, stood up, and gave him a hug. Are you done? Yeah, Locke nodded, glancing at the book Tang Wei was reading. It was an economics book. Tang Wei had chosen a management major, a popular one in the U.S. Before learning about the existence of magic in this world, Locke had also been working towards that field, so he was able to temporarily tutor Tang Wei while she was studying. Although Tang Wei felt exhausted during her time in New York, she had been living a fulfilling life. The only thing she wasn't used to was the frequent overwork at night, often causing her to sleep until almost noon. I'm going back tomorrow, Locke said after a deep kiss. Tang Wei remained silent. Although she had known about this for a long time, she felt a deep sense of reluctance when faced with it. Emotions often go beyond reason. Unconsciously, Locke had become the ray of sunshine in her life. There's a bar downstairs. Let's go have a drink. Seeing that Tang Wei was in a bad mood, Locke suggested. Okay, Tang Wei nodded. The apartment wasn't far from New York's Central Park, and the bar Locke had chosen was coincidentally called the New York Central Park Bar. The two chose a seat near the window, ordered drinks, and enjoyed the bar's dynamic music and lively atmosphere. Speaking of which, the first time I saw you, I didn't expect you were still in high school. Looking at Locke's appearance, Tang Wei sighed with emotion. You look young, but the temperament on your body is completely different from that of a high school student. Then what was my first impression of you? Locke smiled. Big fat sheep, that's right, but I didn't expect that I would fall into your trap in less than a day and become your prey. Tang Wei rolled his eyes at Locke, and his coquettish expression made Locke smile slightly. Why do I feel that I am the one who suffers? Locke smiled. You know, a young man as handsome and talented as me. I don't know how many girls are coveting me. Can you not be so narcissistic? This is not narcissism, but a fact. Locke pointed to himself. Just based on this handsome face, few girls can refuse. Shameless. Thank you for the compliment. The two chatted casually. At this time, 2 men and 2 women walked into the bar. These people were not very old and looked to be in their early 20s. The man and woman who entered first glanced around. The girl nudged the man next to her and excitedly called out, "Hey, Ross, look, wow." Following the girl's direction, Ross soon spotted a woman with a cool, sexy figure swaying to the music. Ross stared at the girl for a long moment, admiring her. Then, turning to the 2 people behind him, he said, "Look, Monica, who can compare to my wife? Yeah, Carol's cool." Monica nodded. She hadn't expected her sister-in-law to be so unfazed by her brother's gaze on other beauties. She nudged the man next to her with her elbow. "Chandler, you regret this, don't you? If you had been the one to pursue Carol in college, you could be enjoying beautiful women with your wife right now. Didn't you say Chandler was gay?" Hearing this, Carol couldn't help but whisper in her husband Ross's ear. "SHH." Ross quickly raised his finger, then glanced at his friend with a guilty look. Carol misunderstood his expression, and nodded knowingly. After all, these were not the days of political correctness, and no one would dare to admit such a thing. Seeing his wife's reaction, Ross couldn't help but smirk. He and Chandler had been childhood friends, so naturally, Chandler wasn't gay. This was all intentional on his part. They had both been interested in Carol, and one day, a flash of inspiration struck him, and he secretly told Carol that Chandler was gay, and his boyfriend was another classmate who was pursuing Carol. Thanks to Chandler's easily misleading demeanor, Carol easily believed him, and Ross successfully eliminated 2 rivals, something he had always been most proud of. Locke also noticed the 4 people and was slightly surprised. Weren't these the characters from the show Friends? What's wrong? Tang Wei asked, noticing Locke's sudden distraction. Nothing, Locke smiled. I just think this world is a small place. He hadn't expected to arrive in not only the Big Bang Theory world, but also the Friends show. He wondered if he could get any missions from them. The thought was fleeting, and he had no intention of meeting her right now. After all, he would be returning to Dallas soon. Seeing that the girl Ross was hugging was his ex-wife, the plot probably hadn't begun yet. After all, after he went to college next year, he would have many opportunities to come to New York. Chapter 33, Popular Science Magic. The next day at noon, Tang Wei, her face rosy and radiant, lay in bed, watching Locke packing his clothes and luggage. A complex mix of emotions escaped to her. Although their relationship had been a mere transaction from the start, human nature is complex and subject to change. The harmonious relationship they had shared, coupled with the lack of affection she had already experienced after her father's betrayal, had fueled her anticipation. However, Locke's unequivocal stance, coupled with his assurance that she was free to choose, reaffirmed her belief that the man before her was a scumbag, one whose attitude had been clear from the outset. Love is wonderful, but don't let it get too high. This was all she could warn herself, but she had no intention of leaving. After all, she still needed Locke's help with college tuition and living expenses, allowing her to focus more on her studies. Finally, with Tang Wei's farewell, Locke boarded the plane and began his journey back to Dallas. Meanwhile, in the Cooper's yard, Peggy and Missy sat facing each other on 2 stacked blankets, each surrounded by a circle of various dolls. The warm sunlight bathed the 2 of them, seated amidst teddy bears, dinosaurs, and various dolls, cups of brewed tea in hand, enjoying a girlish tea party. Speaking of tea, Do you know how it was discovered? Peggy picked up the teapot and poured herself a cup. I don't know. There's so much I don't know. You're making me sound like Sheldon right now, Missy shrugged nonchalantly. Peggy ignored Missy's explanation and smiled. Legend has it that the ancient Chinese Emperor Shennan personally tasted hundreds of wild plants to discover the properties, and tea was one of them. Another theory is that while he was boiling water in his garden, a tea plant leaf fell into the pot, leading him to discover tea's properties. Tea actually comes from trees. Missy tilted her head, looking at the tea in her hand with a look of surprise. Where else do you think it comes from? Peggy glanced at Missy with a sullen look. From the supermarket, Missy said matter-of-factly. Peggy smiled politely. At this point, she also felt that she and Missy had a different opinion. The difference in IQ is not just a numerical description, it represents a huge generation gap. Although Peggy is still a child at this time, it is often difficult for her to play with children of the same age. Little Sheldon has more topics to talk to her, but he is more hostile to Peggy, so it is difficult for the two of them to talk together. In comparison, she feels more comfortable with Locke. Thinking of this, Peggy couldn't help but miss Locke. She didn't know what he had been doing in New York. As far as she knew, Locke was only at the Mathematical Olympiad last year. Thinking of this, Peggy was suddenly stunned. Several blurry images appeared in her mind. It seemed to be a strange yet familiar memory, but when she wanted to think about it carefully, she couldn't remember it at all. Peggy. It took a long moment for Peggy to come back to her senses. She looked at her fingers and clapped them aside. I'm fine, just thinking about something from the past. Despite saying this, Peggy was filled with confusion. With her intelligence, she naturally possessed a memory as sharp as Sheldon's, yet she couldn't recall anything from that time. There had to be some special reason. Locke, who had just returned to his room, was unaware of Peggy's change, nor did he expect Balthazar's magic to have any problems. Balthazar wasn't to blame. The magic he had cast was a temporary memory seal, which, compared to other spells targeting memory, was harmless to the brain. However, the effects of magic gradually diminished over time, and after 2 or 3 years, the seal would completely disappear. A typical child wouldn't be able to accurately recall memories from a specific day 2 years ago. Those memories would naturally fade into the depths of their minds. But Balthazar had no idea that Peggy was a genius who could recall every memory, even down to the second, simply by thinking about it. Fortunately, the effects of magic would last at least a year or two, so Locke didn't have to worry about it for now. Having just returned to his dorm, he sat at his desk, twirling a pen. Having asked nearly all the questions he'd accumulated about magic during his time in New York, Locke began to consider his secondary career. What kind of secondary career would suit him now? One that would also spread his fame and earn him immense acclaim. When it comes to fame, scientists clearly can't compare to singers or actors. While scientists' prowess is often limited to their own circles, it's not easy to break out. In the US, however, singers and top actors can more easily spread their fame worldwide. Considering his primary profession as a student, studying science would greatly aid his study of magic, and these were things he couldn't afford to give up. For singers and actors, standing out isn't easy, not to mention the intrigues of the entertainment industry. Even after achieving fame, they still need to run around for events and network with influential figures to secure more opportunities and maintain their visibility, all of which takes a considerable amount of time. This completely contradicted Locke's goal of prioritizing learning. He needed something that didn't require a great deal of effort, something that could be pursued part-time or as a side job. His most important goal at the moment was to improve his magical prowess and achieve immortality as quickly as possible. After careful consideration, Locke realized that there was indeed a career that could bring him immense fame without devoting too much time. That was being a writer. A top writer could easily spread their fame worldwide, even achieving world-renowned fame with just a single work. Just like Rowling, who wrote The Boy Wizard, instantly became a world-renowned author with Harry Potter. Even many elderly people in the East Country had heard of her. The barrier to entry for writing is low, but it requires talent. Locke's talent in his previous life was mediocre, barely managing to be a perfect writer in the online literary world, but that didn't mean he didn't have the necessary skills now. A top writer requires inspiration and a polished style. Now, with his exceptional intelligence, writing is no problem if he sets his mind to it. As for inspiration, Locke might not be able to conjure up stories like those talented writers, so what if he couldn't just be a plagiarist? In his past life, he'd read countless online novels, stories lying there, waiting for Locke to transform them into beautifully written works. Naturally, the best-suited novel for the US would be fantasy. After careful selection, Locke settled on an early online novel, The Arcane Throne, of course. Locke would have to make some adjustments to the novel's setting to refine it. First and foremost, the arcane in the book could be replaced with the magical concepts he was currently studying. In other words, Locke, a magician himself, was planning to write a fantasy novel that would popularize magic. The thought of it was quite intriguing. Knowledge equals power. So-called gods are merely more powerful arcanists. We will re-examine the world through the lens of the arcane, where science is arcane and arcane is science. After writing this introduction, Locke felt a surge of inspiration. He pulled paper from a drawer and began writing rapidly. The improvement in intelligence can be comprehensive, just like the protagonist in the movie Limitless, who, after taking the smart drug NZT-48, completed tens of thousands of words in just one day, the quality of which stunned his editor. But even after taking NZT-48, the protagonist's IQ couldn't compare to Locke's. As long as he had a story idea, writing was effortless for Locke. About an hour later, Locke glanced at his densely packed manuscript and thought to himself, handwriting is so much slower than typing. It takes me so long to finish just over 1,000 words by hand. If I were typing, I could easily double that. Wait, how could I have forgotten that computers and printers were already available by then? Thinking of this, Locke cursed himself for not having thought of this. He immediately left the dormitory and headed to the nearest electronics store. He had his own computer and an internet cable, but no printer, and this would also be an opportunity to upgrade his computer's specs. So Locke directly ordered a bunch of accessories, in addition to which there were also miscellaneous items such as floppy disks and personal printer manuscript paper. Under the power of the US dollar, they were delivered to the dormitory as soon as possible. Chapter 34 Christmas. School started soon after returning to Dallas, and Locke's life settled into a routine. He had already begun self-studying college subjects, including math and physics, chemistry, biology, and psychology. He wouldn't specialize in these subjects in his future university studies. He had already decided to focus on math and physics. His primary goal was to enrich his knowledge base. With Locke's current intelligence, even without guidance, as long as he read enough, his knowledge would be comparable to that of a PhD holder in a specialized field, if not surpassed. Locke attended every school baseball team game but declined regular practices. With him as a pitcher, the team became a household name in Texas, even attracting numerous professional baseball teams. Locke declined these offers, as he hadn't set his sights on becoming a sports star. This year's mathematical Olympiad was held in Los Angeles, and like the previous year, Locke's team won the championship medal. After the competition, Locke didn't return to Dallas with his school team, planning to stay in Los Angeles for a few days as Christmas approached. It was Jennifer who invited Locke to stay. She was attending college in Los Angeles, and upon hearing that Locke had arrived, she invited him to ride the rocket with her. Christmas holidays in the United States vary slightly from state to state, but most run from December 22nd to January 5th, so many people like to take their annual leave together. Locke had been staying at Jennifer's house for the past few days. Through a former classmate, Locke had found an internship at a Los Angeles company, which paid much better than a restaurant job. To facilitate both work and living, Jennifer rented a studio apartment near campus, where Locke would stay until Christmas. Thousands of miles from her family and busy with her studies, the internship offered a good salary and was crucial to her company's reputation. She wanted to use the opportunity to build relationships and potentially join the company after graduation, so she chose not to return to Texas. Jennifer's father had originally agreed to spend Christmas with her, but unexpectedly took a last-minute job for a long-time client, which tripled the price, forcing him to cancel. Disappointed, Jennifer invited Locke to stay in Los Angeles for Christmas. "I know, Dad. Locke's in Los Angeles for a competition, and I invited him to stay with me for a few days." "You need 4 more days? I guess we won't be able to make it in time for Christmas Eve." "It's okay. Locke and I can go. You should take care of yourself while you're working." "There's no need to rush." After Jennifer hung up, Locke said, "He's coming next week." Jennifer nodded. "Yet, the money's not free. Amy's father only paid for 1 year of my tuition. I have to figure out how to pay for the second year myself." Locke opened his mouth but ultimately didn't bring up the idea of paying for her tuition. The subject was still somewhat taboo, especially between friends. If Locke brought it up without Jennifer bringing it up, it would likely hurt her feelings. He could only chuckle, getting up from the sofa and rubbing her head. "Okay, can we eat?" At this point, Jennifer's mood finally brightened. Living with Locke these past few days, she'd seen his cooking skills, much better than her own, especially with the many Eastern specialties. "What do you think of the roast chicken I made yesterday?" Recalling the taste of yesterday's roast chicken, Jennifer nodded repeatedly. "Delicious. Are we having this today? I've changed the recipe. Today's is my signature honey roast chicken, but I think yesterday's was great, as good as my performance tonight." Jennifer rolled her eyes at Locke. Locke had been tossing her around so much these past few days that her legs felt weak every morning when she went to her internship. Many of her colleagues wondered if she was too tired, yet her face remained rosy and her complexion was bright and healthy. When Locke brought out the honey roast chicken, Jennifer drooled frantically. The sweet aroma mingled with a meaty flavor. It was truly divine. Locke's so-called signature honey roast chicken was actually a chicken cooked in barbecued pork sauce. The sweet aroma wafting from the bright red roast chicken was absolutely mouth-watering. It tasted okay, but the breast was a little tough. "Next time, I'd better not cook the whole chicken at once. It requires too much heat and technique." Locke, who already had more than half of his cooking experience at the intermediate level, commented on his own cooking, not being particularly satisfied. Jennifer ignored him and devoured the pistol egg furiously, finishing a third of the meal by herself. Compared to her usual appetite, this was already way over the limit. After finishing, Jennifer complained to Locke about how delicious the food was. She knew she'd be getting fat soon. Glancing at Jennifer, who was fixated on the boring soap opera on TV, Locke thought, "Give me a while to digest it. I'll get you some exercise. It'll definitely help you burn off all the calories you've consumed watching the performance on TV." Jennifer sighed. She'd once considered becoming a celebrity, confident that her looks and figure surpassed those of the actors on TV. But recently, while interning at a company, she'd met a senior female executive who seemed to be taking care of her, and she'd begun to wonder if she could also pursue a career in finance. Young people of that age are often fickle-minded. Locke didn't comment much on Jennifer's story. In fact, he believed that with Jennifer's mathematical talent, she probably wouldn't make it to the top of the financial world. But she was still young and wanted to try this path, so no one could stop her. He had no right to dictate matters involving life choices and future plans. At most, he could offer suggestions. Locke had previously considered finance and was familiar with the subject. He simply offered some advice based on his own knowledge. After listening to Locke's words, Jennifer realized how difficult it was to pursue this path. After some thought, she felt reluctant to give up, so she put it aside for now. "By the way, the company is having an internal cocktail party on Christmas Eve, and I'll be attending. Do you want to come and see it?" "No problem," Locke agreed immediately. He figured that as an intern, Jennifer wouldn't be formally invited, and would probably just be serving dishes and drinks. He didn't say anything. He hadn't seen Jennifer in months. Since Jennifer and her friends graduated, Locke had found 2 other girls to hang out with in his free time, but they weren't as exciting as Jennifer. Locke missed her after not seeing her for a while, otherwise, he wouldn't have stopped in Los Angeles. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Gifts and 640 Million. December 24th, Jennifer left for work early. She needed to arrive early to prepare for the company's cocktail party, primarily liaising with regular employees and the party organizer regarding various miscellaneous matters, including setting up the venue. Locke was left alone to read in the library, a habit he'd developed. Compared to his previous life, when he'd spent his leisure time reading novels and playing games, Locke was noticeably more active in this life. Late in the evening, Locke drove his rental car to the basement garage, took the elevator to the lobby reception desk, and chatted with a receptionist. He'd been picking up Jennifer from work for the past few days, and the receptionist was familiar with Locke. After a few questions, they let him in. On the 30th floor, the elevator doors dinged open, revealing a bustling scene. Stepping out, Locke searched the crowd for his intended audience and quickly spotted Jennifer, who was acting as a makeshift waitress. Seeing Jennifer's attire, Locke whistled. "Looks like tonight's going to be an exciting Christmas night." Laughing to himself, Locke walked towards Jennifer and embraced her. "Ah," Jennifer gasped softly, turning to recognize Locke. "You scared me to death." Holding Jennifer's hand to prevent her from dropping the tray, Locke smiled. "It's a surprise." Jennifer and Locke reached the 34th floor, the chairman's reception room. The employees were enjoying the party on the 30th floor, and there was no one else here. "You bastard, can't you wait?" Locke didn't reply, but instead captured Jennifer's passionate lips, and the two of them engaged in a conversation. Jennifer wore a slim-fitting women's suit, with a skirt that stopped about 10 centimeters above the knee, a classic professional look. With a little effort, Locke lifted the skirt, his hands becoming restless. For men, uniforms are truly a catalyst, and Locke's interest was now aroused. Jennifer seemed to be influenced by him, wrapping her legs around Locke's waist, allowing him to lift her up. The two of them lingered for a moment, and Locke chuckled. "My beautiful lady is so thoughtful." Those stockings were worth buying. Jennifer's eyes were seductive, her breathing heavy, but she didn't answer him. She had clearly prepared everything. From her outfit to her stockings, they were exactly what Locke liked. Over an hour later, Jennifer slumped against the plush sofa in the living room, her eyes hazy. Locke finished packing and went to the window, gazing out at the Los Angeles streetscape. "How many days can you stay?" Jennifer's voice came from behind her after a moment. 3 or 4 days, maybe. "Your father will be here by then, and I don't want to face his face." Jennifer's father always looked unhappy when he saw Locke, and there was nothing he could do about it. After all, he'd taken away the family's wealth. As Locke spoke, he pulled a gift box from his inside jacket pocket and sat down next to Jennifer. "A Christmas present." Jennifer took it with a smile, unwrapping it to reveal a jewelry box with a Tiffany logo. "Isn't this a ring?" Jennifer smiled at Locke. "You'll see when you open it." "Okay." Jennifer opened the box, revealing a pair of diamond earrings. Glancing at the price tag, Jennifer was slightly taken aback. $6,000? That's too expensive. "Trust me, it's nothing." Locke smiled and took out the earrings. "I'll put them on you." Of course, the tag couldn't be removed. Otherwise, who would know if the jewelry was worth $6,000 or $600? Locke was always honest and above board. Jennifer was surprised, but also a little confused. She and Locke weren't even boyfriend and girlfriend, and their relationship had effectively ended since she graduated. Girls like her are always surrounded by suitors, especially in American universities, where it's not uncommon for beautiful girls to move on seamlessly after a breakup. After entering college, perhaps because Locke had left such a deep impression on her, she didn't respond to the advances of other male classmates for a long time. A few days ago, she finally agreed to have dinner with a classmate who had been pursuing her and had a good impression of her, but then she got the news that Locke was in Los Angeles to participate in a competition. She almost broke the date without hesitation, because Locke always had an irresistible charm, even though she knew he was a playboy. After Locke left again, she didn't know how long it would take to force herself to stop thinking about that jerk. "It suits you very well." Locke's words brought Jennifer back to her senses. Since it had come to this, she might as well savor the moment. With that thought in mind, she placed her hands on Locke's shoulders and kissed him with her red lips. Boom! Just then, a violent explosion was heard, and both of them stopped moving. "What's going on?" Jennifer was slightly startled. The sound came from across the street. Locke quickly went to the window and saw flames and billowing smoke rising from the building across the street. "This doesn't look like a natural gas pipeline explosion." Looking at the aftermath, Locke thought to himself, "It looks more like a bomb." "Oh my god, that's this Hong Fu building." "What happened?" Jennifer reached Locke's side and covered her mouth in shock. Hong Fu building. Locke felt the name was familiar, and he quickly thought about it in his mind. Finally, he found a movie in his memory. It seemed to be an action movie about a detective named John facing off against dozens of armed men alone. "How much do you know about that Nakatomi building?" "Who owns it?" Locke asked. "It's a Japanese company. The owner's name is Aoki or something." Oriental names are always a bit strange, Jennifer recalled, then pointed to the street below and said, "Look, there's police there." "Oh my god, they even brought armored vehicles." As expected of the United States, the police can easily pull out such things. Ordinary criminals have no chance against such armored vehicles. Locke was just thinking this when, with a whoosh, a line of fire shot out from the second floor of the building. Boom! The armored vehicle driving up the stairs was hit by a rocket, completely reduced to a pile of burning scrap metal. It seems there's more to this world than just sitcoms, but I don't need to get involved in this kind of thing. The familiar scene made Locke accept it as something he had seen in a movie before. He was not the type to meddle in other people's business, and his first thought was to avoid trouble. But then he thought of something else. The robbers seemed to be targeting the $640 million in bearer bonds stored in the Nakatomi Company's vault. The term bearer bonds might sound impressive, but they were actually just East Country Treasury bills, or government bonds. However, the figure of $640 million made Locke's heart flutter. Maybe something big has happened. Let's go back, Locke suggested. Jennifer nodded, and the two of them cleaned up their tracks and returned to the 30th floor. They saw almost everyone gathered at the windows, watching the action across the street. Some were using binoculars they'd found somewhere, observing and reporting in real time. Locke stood by the window for a moment, chatting with a few others. Then, while everyone's attention was drawn to the building across the street, he quietly left. Quickly descending through the emergency exit, Locke used his invisibility technique and, following his memory, reached the parking lot. He then took the elevator to the 29th floor. $640 million in bearer bonds was a stealth bargain. Comparing the scenario to his memory, he thought the chances of securing them were high, and the chances of being discovered later were low. After waiting for about 10 minutes, Locke heard a loud explosion. He quickly ran upstairs and saw a man in a suit, two men, and a woman holding him hostage, quickly fleeing. Locke's focus was on a bag held by a robber following the man in the suit. Inside was $640 million worth of bonds. Bang! Detective John McClane, hiding in a corner, punched the robber's underling, knocking him to the ground. The bag fell, and the $640 million worth of bonds inside also scattered on the ground. Hans, John McClane ignored the bonds. He called out the robber leader's name and, submachine gun in hand, stood before Hans and his underlings. John, visibly wounded, limped forward a short distance. "That's what you came for, a fucking robbery. Put your gun down. Why blow up the whole building, Hans? If you stole $600, you could disappear immediately. If you stole $600 million, they'd stop at nothing to find you, unless they think you're dead." Hans pointed the gun at John McClane's wife, Holly's head. "Now put your gun down and your hands up, Detective McClane." John smiled bitterly, slowly lowering the finally tossing it aside. Watching the confrontation, Locke, still using his invisibility, came up behind John and collected the fallen bonds into his storage compartment. After securing the bonds, Locke didn't stop, but quickly departed, returning to the building across the street. He remained invisible throughout the entire trip, making his movements undetectable not only to the police and reporters gathered below, but even surveillance cameras would have been unable to detect him. Chapter 36 Excessive. There's news that the robbers in this Hongfu building robbery were targeting $640 million worth of bearer bonds in the building's vault. The robbers have been apprehended, but the bonds are missing. The Hongfu group is urging the police. The news on TV was still about this Hongfu building robbery. This news was so explosive, and with $640 million in US aid at stake, it spread throughout the country in just one night. "You look cheerful." Jennifer sat down next to Locke. "Maybe I just enjoy watching those Japanese get into trouble." Locke shrugged and pulled Jennifer into his arms. "Yesterday's scene was spectacular. Those guys really did get into trouble. I heard $640 million disappeared for some unknown reason, and it hasn't been returned yet." Jennifer held Locke's mischievous hand. "Isn't that enough? How could it be? I could play with your legs for a year." Locke had originally planned to stay in Los Angeles for a few more days, but to deal with the $640 million in bonds he had just acquired, he left after a day. Over the next 2 weeks, Locke traveled through Tokyo, Hong Kong, London, and Paris, selling off his bonds and converting them into a family fund before returning to Dallas to inherit a vast inheritance. To ensure safety, he ultimately inherited only $420 million from the bonds. Fortunately, they had already been converted into legal property, eliminating the risk of investigation. This slight loss was necessary. With these preparations, Locke's chances of being discovered were practically zero. As Hans had said, if the theft was $600 million, they would stop at nothing to find him, unless they believed he was doomed. Hans was indeed dead, and Locke was a bystander with no connection to the incident, having only been across from the Nakatomi building. Whether the FBI would investigate the residents of this building during their investigation wasn't a given, but even if they did, he wasn't worried, as the intensity of the investigation would undoubtedly be far less than that of those within the Nakatomi building. During his brief absence, everyone was so busy checking on the Nakatomi building that no one, not even Jennifer, noticed how long he had been gone. Locke had also greeted and chatted with many of them, many of whom were deeply impressed by Jennifer's handsome boyfriend, effectively establishing a strong alibi. Shortly after returning to Dallas, Locke received a call from Random House, reporting on the sales of the Arcane Throne, as stipulated in his contract. He had self-funded the publication of the book for a simple reason: the publisher's price was too low. Initially, they offered a flat $10,000 buyout, but only after Locke was about to leave did they opt for a 4% commission and full copyright, even refusing to pay the typical 6% minus 14% commission offered by new authors. The publisher's reasoning was that as a new author, Locke had no reputation and distribution depended entirely on the publisher's channels. In this situation, the publishing risk fell entirely on the publisher, who had to invest in printing and distribution, and the costs of building and maintaining distribution channels were considerable. When it comes to book sales, the question of who plays a greater role, the author or the publisher, is a difficult one. Authors naturally believe they play the most important role, and a book's quality is paramount. After all, readers come to the book for its content. If the content doesn't resonate with them, sales won't come. Publishing houses, once they've established channels, can sit back and relax and make money. They're still trying to exploit authors, leaving them no chance of survival. However, publishing houses believe that channels are king. With them, even mediocre books can be artificially hyped. After haggling with the publisher for a while, they couldn't reach an agreement. At this point, Locke suddenly realized that no matter how sky-high the price offered, it was still a low price in his eyes. Their expectations were completely different. Understanding this, Locke decided to publish the book himself. This way, he could naturally earn a high commission, even exceeding his initial expectations, while also retaining the copyright. The first volume, containing 240,000 words, had an initial print run of 100,000 copies, distributed through Random House's channels with minimal promotion. A month had passed since its release, and the results weren't quite what Locke had hoped for, with just over 1,000 copies sold. But he wasn't worried. After all, he was a completely unknown newcomer, and his previous publicity had been rather mediocre. After careful consideration, he decided not to rush into spending on promotional activities, preferring to wait for word of mouth to build momentum. After all, while he had a small fortune, large-scale publicity would require significant investment, and the results might not always be as expected, making it easy to waste money. Now that I have the funds, perhaps I should invest in a large media company, Locke mused. The global popularity of Harry Potter owed much to the quality of the books themselves, as well as the prominent promotional efforts of Warner Media. The two mutually reinforced each other. If Locke could become a major shareholder in a major media company, he could naturally use similar operations to promote his own works worldwide, thereby further enhancing his reputation and gaining potential. This approach was far superior to simply spending money on publicity, saving significant funds. After all, the efficiency and utilization of funds were completely different. Locke's subsequent high school career was unremarkable. Despite having inherited billions, he kept a low profile, investing his money in the stock market. In addition to investing in stocks of promising companies, he also invested a significant amount in Disney, furthering his ambitions. His daily life remained largely unchanged. It's about occasional relaxation, a balance of needs. These private friendships all begin quietly and end naturally. The rest of the time, Locke is either studying or using meditation to hone his skills, averaging 18 hours a day. He became even more absorbed after discovering that this world doesn't just have sitcoms, but also action-packed movies. After all, many action-packed movies have quite a bit of action. In this respect, Locke is much more diligent than young Sheldon. Young Sheldon always goes to bed by 9 o'clock and enjoys reading comics, playing games, playing musical instruments, and watching TV. It's fair to say that young Sheldon wastes an inordinate amount of time. Peggy is a bit more tolerant, but as a child, she's also playful and curious, which also wastes a lot of time. But their learning efficiency is incredibly high. With their incredibly high IQs, they generally grasp everything they're told. grasping it instantly and applying it to other situations. Sometimes, the professor is left speechless by his questions, unable to answer them, and even has to discuss certain viewpoints with him. Locke's IQ surpassed both Sheldon and Peggy by this point. Combined with the fact that he spent far more time each day than Sheldon, his knowledge base naturally accumulated at an astonishing rate. Time flew by, and with high school graduation approaching, Locke made a special trip to Princeton University, secured an interview, and after a while, successfully secured his desired position. As for Peggy, she had received her offer from Princeton even before Locke. Young Sheldon also chose Princeton, a departure from the plot of The Big Bang Theory. Initially, Sheldon's mother, Mary, was strongly opposed to the decision. After all, if Sheldon went to Princeton, she wouldn't be able to take care of him. Mary was concerned about letting her precious Shelley go so far away to attend college alone. However, Beverly, a true expert, had been using various methods since meeting Sheldon, gradually softening Mary's stance and alleviating her resistance. Furthermore, young Sheldon himself was strongly committed to Princeton, even resorting to unusual tactics to achieve his goal. Ultimately, Mary reluctantly relented. Chapter 37 Graduation in Boomtown. At the Swanson residence. "Wow, Locke, you look so handsome in that outfit," Linda, opening the door, greeted Locke with a smile. "The girls you invited tonight are so lucky, aren't they, Barry?" Perhaps because of Locke's influence, Barry and Linda's passion rekindled, and there was no sign of divorce. Seeing Locke walk in, Barry nodded. "Not bad, but a little worse than when I was younger," Locke smiled. Although Barry was already in his 30s, he was very self-disciplined and exercised regularly. Naturally, he didn't have a big belly like little Sheldon's father, and he still looked very handsome. "Peggy, Locke is here, come down quickly," Linda called upstairs. "Just a minute," Peggy replied. Linda checked the time and couldn't help but go up to see what was going on. Barry chatted with Locke. "Thank you, Locke. Peggy's going to have a hard time finding a date for prom." "It's okay, Mr. Swanson. You've taken great care of me these past 2 years. Sheldon is the perfect choice for prom with Peggy, but he has his own school prom too. Anyway, thank you. Just dance with Peggy for the first dance. Linda and I want Peggy's high school life to end perfectly. After the first dance, Linda will be with Peggy, and you can choose any girl you like." At this point, Barry seemed to think of something and leaned close to Locke's ear with a slightly frivolous expression. "Have you prepared any safety measures? If you forgot, I have them here." As he spoke, Barry pulled out a dozen cards that looked like magic playing cards. This reminded Locke of Howard and Rajesh. On The Big Bang Theory, the two of them practically carried a dozen cards with them everywhere, but the opportunities to use them were few and far between. Barry clearly had confidence in Locke. He'd heard about Locke's achievements at school, and prom was a peak time for incidents. A group of young men and women, their hormones surging, gathered on the day of their departure, embracing and swaying passionately under dim, flickering lights and emotive background music. The emotions evoked at such a moment were truly unbearable. Similar situations, fueled by Hollywood's influence, became popular worldwide, with various holiday parties becoming a popular time, much like the later popular XX Festival in the East, which symbolized the night of virginity loss. According to party tradition, if possible, boys were supposed to drive to the homes of their invited girlfriends to pick them up and go to the party together. Locke was a bit different. He picked up his girlfriend first, then came to the Swanson residence, where he and Linda drove Peggy home. Arriving at school, they arrived just in time for prom. Lip was dating Ivy, the girl he'd somewhat despised. The two had been on and off several times, and Locke understood their relationship. Being together was better than being single. High school is really over. After the first dance, Lip watched Peggy being led away by Linda and said to Locke with a touch of sadness, "I don't know if we'll ever see each other again. Life is always full of partings," Locke said. Having experienced things in his past life, he didn't feel sad, but rather a sense of emotion. "As long as you remember, all those beautiful things will still be there." "That's true." Lip perked up, looking at the girls who had eagerly approached him with a look of envy and jealousy mixed with vulgarity. "It seems you have things to do." Locke spread his hands. "Tonight I'm just a tool to comfort these beautiful girls, Pa." Lip gave Locke a lemon middle finger, then watched as Locke was dragged to the center of the dance floor by a wicked girl. The dance didn't last long. Graduation prom was organized by the school, and there were various rules and restrictions. Everyone had already made plans for a second dance, which would be held at a wealthy classmate's villa and would include unlimited drinks. In the United States, drinking is legal only at 21, but that's only in public. Privately, of course, people can do whatever they want. Even American Pie and the like are based on real-life recipes. Locke had a busy night. Even with his 182 centimeters physique, he almost couldn't keep up. He returned to his dorm in the middle of the night and slept until almost noon when Peggy's call woke him up. "When are you planning on going to Princeton?" Peggy asked, revealing her biggest concern. "I'll see. Before I leave, I'm going to Prosperity. I have a date." "We'll meet at school." Locke's date was with Ashley Parker, a woman he'd met on the streets of Dallas last month. With her blonde hair, blue eyes, fair skin, and voluptuous lips, she was instantly recognizable, reminiscent of Natasha, the Black Widow from the Marvel movies. She was visiting Dallas, and the two bumped into each other on the street. Inspired by their appearance, Locke struck up a conversation and learned she lived in the nearby town of Prosperity. Prosperity is located in the desert, about a 3-hour drive from Dallas, and consists of just over 300 households. This was once a renowned mining town. With the gold mining and the influx of people, it gradually evolved into a small town. However, the mines eventually dried up, and the town began to decline with the gold mining. Many young people left for big cities and never returned, leaving the town with a rapidly aging population. Locke drove to the town. Although its population was small, it covered a considerable area. He stopped at a phone booth on the side of the road and flipped through the yellow pages, which listed phone numbers. It's no wonder that a love-struck girl had zero IQ, actually trying to test Locke's ability to locate her home. In those days, the yellow pages and American phone booths listed every household's address and phone number. By checking the phone number, finding the girl's home in such a small town was easy. Ashley's mother was the sheriff in the town, and the plot was straight out of a movie, with a giant, mutated spider preying on humans. Ashley was only 17 or 18 at this time, the most beautiful age for a girl. Locke had once been fascinated by that Hollywood starlet, and now that the 17 or 18-year-old Black Widow was before him, he felt he couldn't miss out. After inheriting a large fortune, Locke registered a private investment fund and gradually converted the assets into investments within it. While his daily schedule wasn't busy, he still needed to keep an eye on it. He planned to invite Ashley to Princeton University to serve as his assistant for a while, helping him with various chores. The events of the film hadn't yet occurred, but judging by Ashley's age, it was likely to happen soon, so Locke didn't mind encountering her. After all, a skilled and courageous person would find spiders, which could be dealt with by ordinary firearms, posing no threat to him. Especially since his storage space was already overflowing with weapons and ammunition. Chapter 38 Development. Locke's potential points increased smoothly throughout the year. By honing combat skills and adding potential points, his attributes improved rapidly. In particular, Locke discovered that, through meditation, his magic power slowly enhanced various attributes. Locke's strength and agility now exceeded 150 points, and his constitution, which he had focused on improving, reached 181. He thought about the new system features that would appear when his intelligence reached 200 points, and wondered what new changes would emerge after his constitution reached 200 points. With his thoughts on things, Locke picked up the receiver of a public phone booth, inserted a coin, and dialed Ashley Parker's home. The line connected, and a young boy's voice came through. It was Ashley's younger brother, Mike Parker. In the movies, he loved spiders and was quite knowledgeable about them, so he had a close relationship with this spider breeder, the town's first victim. "Hey, Mike, it's Locke. Is Ashley home?" Locke asked directly. He had been calling Ashley from time to time recently, and Mike often answered the phone, so he was no stranger to him. "Ashley's still in the yard." "Wait a minute, I'll go get her for you," Mike said as he ran off. A moment later, Ashley's voice came from the other end of the line. "Locke, dear Ashley, I'm already in Prosperity Town." "Really? That's great. I'll be right there." "Wait a minute, have you found our address?" "How could I possibly let Her Royal Highness down?" Locke said with a smile. "I was just on my way there. I just passed by the movie theater in your town and saw a great movie playing. It seems like nothing can stop you," Ashley agreed without hesitation. "Movie? I'll get changed." "You?" As they spoke, there was a sudden commotion on the other end of the line. Locke could vaguely hear Mike's screams. "What happened?" "Nothing. My silly little brother accidentally fell down while walking." He can go to the movie, but he'll have to wait for half an hour. That's settled then. The appointed time was half an hour. Locke arrived at Ashley's door in less than 10 minutes and saw a little boy lying on the grass in front of the house. "Hey, you're Locke, right? Is this our first meeting?" The little boy greeted Locke as he got out of the car. The two chatted, and soon Mike had developed a strong liking for Locke. For Locke, dealing with a little boy was easy. Although it was supposed to be half an hour, Locke waited outside Ashley's house for nearly 40 minutes before she even left. The young, beautiful girl was as beautiful as a flower, and it was clear that Ashley's outfit was carefully chosen to highlight her unique features. Scarlett, in her youth, had been a goddess for many, with few flaws save for her slightly shorter legs. Locke, a trouble-averse man, had come to Prosperity Town, and that sentiment played a significant role. The two arrived at the cinema, and Ashley didn't choose a recently released movie, but a horror film, one that was nearing its end and destined to be a small audience. Locke understood. He wasn't completely clueless. This was a clear, easy-to-understand question. Ashley, who grew up under the strict watch of her mother, a sheriff, watched her classmates flirt with each other daily at school, and she'd long harbored similar thoughts. Furthermore, she'd met a dream guy, Locke, who was far superior to the naive boys in high school. His immense charm had Ashley instantly convinced she must marry him the moment they met. Having just graduated from high school, her strict mother had finally loosened some of her grip, so she naturally seized the opportunity. Girls in this country are more proactive and open-minded than those across the Pacific, and the two hit it off immediately. The movie began. American horror films are typically all about screaming, running, and blood. Locke wasn't impressed, and Ashley wasn't paying attention. However, as the terrifying scenes unfolded on the big screen, Locke cooperated and held the girl in his arms. Then, of course, they comforted the frightened girl. Throughout the film, neither of them paid attention. Finally, Ashley used her remaining shred of sanity to temporarily stop Locke. "I like you very much, but we're moving too fast." Ashley hesitated. Young, handsome, humorous, and multi-talented, Locke fulfilled every fantasy she had, a dream prince. She stopped him simply out of a girl's modesty. Locke wasn't in a hurry. It made things more interesting. He put his arm around her and whispered, "Of course, dear. I like you, but I won't force you." "That's so kind." The girl was overcome with emotion. After the movie, they strolled around the streets and had dinner before Locke walked Ashley home. Arriving at Ashley's door, they immediately saw Sheriff Samantha, who had been waiting. Ashley tried to pull her mother inside, but Samantha came directly in front of Locke, staring at him sternly. "Hello, nice to meet you, Sheriff Samantha," Locke greeted her. After a quick look at Locke, perhaps thanks to his exceptional charisma, Samantha's stern expression softened slightly, her warnings changing to, "I know you. I heard you were going to Princeton. I don't want Ashley to get hurt." "Don't worry, Ms. Samantha," Locke said with a smile. "I like Ashley very much." For Locke, dealing with a single mother wasn't too difficult. Perhaps due to his charisma, he easily passed Samantha's test. In the days that followed, Locke found temporary lodging in the small town. He would often hang out with the girls and enjoy some tug-of-war. Within a few days, the two of them were playing games in Ashley's room. During his time there, Locke kept an eye on the town's development. Many things began to unfold. The mayor's ostriches disappeared en masse, several residents stayed out after a night out at a bar, a neighbor's house was empty, and even Deputy Sheriff Pete's cat had vanished. Locke joined in the fun by visiting the town's spider farm, but all the spiders were gone, the owner long gone. In addition to the mine next to it, Locke also discovered many newly dug holes, each with a diameter of only 20 to 30 centimeters, which people could not enter at all. It was obvious that everything in the movie was about to happen. Chapter 39 Shelter. Locke, of course, understood what was happening. He considered taking Ashley away, but considering her mother and brother, he decided to stay. Locke wasn't completely cold-blooded, and he felt confident, so he decided to stay and lend a hand. The situation seemed to be getting worse. Locke and Mike found a few spider leg remains, but they couldn't call for help with just that. Samantha was the town's sheriff, and as for the FBI, they wouldn't send anyone unless they were absolutely certain. These agencies received numerous alerts about alien invasions daily, and if they all had to investigate, they would be overwhelmed. That day, Locke and Samantha discussed it for a while, and finally persuaded her to make some preparations. She went to a gun shop and bought some equipment, which Locke paid for. Aside from the two sheriff's Glock pistols, the other firearms in the police station, such as rifles and shotguns, were all antiques, many of which were single-shot bolt action. These were simply no match for a swarm of spiders. After all, due to insufficient funds, the entire town's police department only has two sheriffs, Samantha and Pete. This situation is common in many remote towns in the United States. Locke helped buy two M4A1s, plus a Remington shotgun, and a large amount of ammunition. Even if he donated it to the police department, he gave it to Samantha to use. It was obvious that Locke was a wealthy man, which made Samantha even more worried about her daughter. Although Ashley was young, beautiful and had a proud figure, men would turn bad when they had money. Who knows what they will be like in the future? Of course, Locke himself was prepared. He bought equipment and brought it with him. The storage space was full of various equipment. After purchasing the equipment, the group returned to the town and soon noticed a large number of townspeople gathered. Before Locke could ask, Samantha explained, "They're going to the town meeting. Wade's up to his old tricks again. That damn vampire's been trying to get everyone to sell their houses and land." Shrugging, Locke said nothing more. He suspected the mayor knew about the possibility of new veins in some of the mines and was making advanced preparations to cash in. The next morning, a man named Chris, Samantha's childhood sweetheart, came to see her. Locke took the opportunity to tell him about the possibility of the mines becoming a den of giant spiders. Clearly, Chris didn't believe it until he saw it for himself. They were currently re-exploring the mines, and some of the tunnels had high concentrations of gas, which could easily explode. According to the plot, the mines could also discover new gold deposits, right next to the tunnels with high gas concentrations, but he had no interest in getting involved. Mining was time-consuming and laborious, and Locke could make more money in the stock market with that time. Locke wasn't worried about his own safety. Even if surrounded by giant spiders, he was confident he could escape. However, to resolve the situation, he still needed to gather evidence and call for help. However, even the townspeople didn't believe in the existence of giant spiders, so Locke and Ashley had to go to Samantha's house to sort out their guns and reload their magazines. Locke also prepared tear gas and irritant spray, as spiders have keen senses, and his tear gas would be a better deterrent. As sunset approached, Locke began to sense danger. Most spiders are sensitive to light and prefer to hunt at night. Just then, Samantha came running back, pulling Chris in. "Locke, something's happened. Gladys has been taken by a spider." Gladys was Chris's aunt, and Chris had told Samantha the news. "I don't think it's just her. To reproduce, these spiders will definitely continue their large-scale hunting. The whole town will be attacked. Tell everyone to gather somewhere safe." "What safe place?" "A reinforced concrete building with easily sealed entrances and exits. Ordinary wooden houses won't be able to stop these giant spiders." Samantha quickly thought of the mayor's newly built shopping mall. "No problem, I'll make the announcement right away. Gather your gear and weapons," Locke reminded her, handing her body armor and MA-41 rifle, along with a prepared ammunition and tactical backpack. "Are you going to war, to protect yourself?" Locke said, running back to find Ashley and having her and Mike down their gear. As for the weapons, forget about them, they didn't know how to use them yet. The town only had two sheriffs, and people were in a state of panic. Samantha packed up and set off with Chris, while Locke took Ashley and Mike straight to the shopping mall. With his keen ears, Locke noticed unusual movements in many parts of the town, screams, dogs barking, and sporadic gunfire. Meanwhile, Locke called a Dallas police chief and explained the situation. Simply contacting the FBI and reporting a giant spider would likely be dismissed as a prank. Fortunately, Locke had connections and offered to donate $1 million if police responded. Under his dollar pressure, the chief finally took the plunge and contacted support. Meanwhile, Samantha began broadcasting, "Attention everyone, this is Sheriff Samantha. An emergency announcement is in progress. A large number of giant spiders have appeared in town and are actively attacking people. Those of you in sturdy, sealed structures, please take shelter and await rescue. Everyone else, please take whatever weapons and ammunition you can carry and head to the newly built shopping mall immediately. Do not stop along the way." Before they knew it, it was already dark. Locke drove Ashley and Mike until they reached the entrance of the shopping mall. Everyone could hear the repetitive broadcast, but whether the townspeople would take it seriously was another matter. Fortunately, Samantha had some authority, and many followed the instructions with some skepticism. As night fell, giant spiders began to appear in large numbers. Locke also spotted spiders near the shopping mall. He fired steadily. This was his first time using a firearm, outside of his meditation battles. With Locke's physique, recoil had no effect on him. He held the gun steady, pulling the trigger whenever a spider appeared. He singled out every spider within 100 meters. His advanced firearms control made his shots nearly unerring. Suddenly, a police car rushed toward them. Locke spotted several people inside. Samantha and Deputy Pete sat in the front seat. Following them were no longer scattered giant spiders, they were practically a continuous mass. These spiders not only hopped along the streets, but also covered the walls and rooftops of buildings on both sides. Go into the shopping mall first, Locke hurriedly instructed Ashley and Mike, opening fire from his M4A1. A giant spider on the roof of the police car was sent flying. Another in midair was blown apart, and the spiders chasing the police car continued to fall. In a short period of time, Locke fired continuously, almost emptying 3 magazines, and covered Samantha and others who ran out of the police car and entered the shopping mall. Compared to the common wooden houses, this shopping mall was built of reinforced concrete, and the gate was also an iron roller shutter. It was much more solid than the homes of the small town residents and was the only safe shelter in the town. Chapter 40 The Long Night. Samantha, get your men upstairs and stop these guys at the door, Locke instructed after the shutters closed. Thanks to their early preparations, Locke could see many of the townspeople holding a variety of weapons. Everyone, hurry up. We need to take care of those little guys, everyone. You call these spiders, almost as big as humans, little guys. Locke followed them upstairs and, through a window, fired at the spiders swarming toward the shopping center, quickly clearing them out. These ordinary giant spiders couldn't break through the mall's main entrance, and the second-floor windows weren't large enough for these spiders to get in. For the time being, everyone was safe. However, Locke soon noticed a massive creature appearing in the dark street in the distance. Its massive body was almost as tall as a floor, and with its hairy legs, it measured 7 or 8 meters in diameter. That said, Tarantula, Mike, who was leaning over Locke, couldn't help but exclaim as the creature drew closer. This enormous creature was as big as a tank. Upon seeing it, Locke swapped his M4A1 for a Benelli shotgun, a weapon more suited to dealing with it. Locke fired repeatedly, unleashing his full firepower. Despite its size, the creature's reflexes were slow. With a barrage of gunfire, massive holes burst through its massive body. These spiders clearly hadn't evolved steel, so the damage from the gunfire was still considerable. Tons of green fluid gushed from the giant spider's wounds. The spider, still advancing, was severely wounded, its body twisting and twitching wildly, its previous impetus gone. Keep firing, aim at the other little guys, Locke shouted to the other townspeople, while he quickly reloaded his shotgun. Having reloaded, Locke raised the muzzle again and fired several more rounds at the giant creature's head, finally decapitating it. The fall of the giant tarantula brought a sigh of relief to the townspeople. Locke surveyed the situation in front of the shopping mall, pulled out tear gas canisters, and handed them to Samantha and a few others. The canisters were thrown into the open space in front of the main gate. Puffs of smoke erupted, and the aggressive swarm of spiders began to scatter in all directions, their previously ferocious attack suddenly easing. Seizing this opportunity, Locke had a chance to call on those still firing to stop and reload, arranging for everyone to form defensive groups and coordinate their resistance, eventually stabilizing the situation. At this point, Locke said, I've called for help, but it will take some time for them to arrive. We must hold this place. Also, is there a suitable escape route? The spider swarm proved more difficult than initially anticipated. If Locke were alone, he could still escape. Although he hadn't yet mastered the art of disapparition, his firepower and magic would allow him to escape safely. However, Locke had to consider Ashley. He wouldn't flee alone unless it was absolutely necessary. The scene was still quite chaotic, with a large number of terrified townspeople gathered on the first floor. Anyone shouting a spider is coming could easily cause chaos. Fortunately, the situation had stabilized for the time being. Locke was relieved that the third floor of the mall had not yet been renovated. Except for a small amount of merchandise, everything was sealed off, so there was no need to worry about spiders getting in. It must be said that by building this shopping mall, the mayor had saved the lives of many townspeople, otherwise, Locke would have been forced to drive away with Ashley. He seized the opportunity to seal several doors. Just then, Samantha approached and announced, "The mayor's missing." Someone discovered a cave beneath the storage room, a branch from a former mine. Mine. Hearing the word mine gave Locke a bad feeling. He quickly said, "Seal that cave entrance quickly. The spider's lair might be inside the mine." Samantha was startled. "But that's where Wade disappeared. He used to work in the mines." "Maybe that's the escape route he planned," Locke retorted. "Do you think he'd dare stay in town if he knew about the giant spiders?" As he spoke, Locke followed Samantha down to the basement. A large cabinet had been moved, revealing a mine. The entrance wasn't sealed shut. There were rails underneath the cabinet, clearly a deliberate trapdoor. The mayor's reason for this was unclear. Recalling the movie, Mayor Wade died shortly after entering the mine. He wasn't taking any chances. He ordered Samantha to seal the place shut, then returned to the second floor with his gun. Most of the townspeople had remembered to bring their weapons when they left, and even the town's weapon stores had been emptied. However, they didn't have much ammunition. Many fled with only a few bullets, forcing Locke to share some from his storage. Fortunately, Locke had recently stockpiled a large supply, so for the time being, he wasn't too worried about a shortage of ammunition. After sealing the mine in the basement, Samantha began to comfort the townspeople, announcing the arrival of FBI reinforcements, which at least temporarily soothed them. Various items in the shopping mall were also being used. All of them belonged to Wade, but by this point, no one cared. Even if the incident was over, Wade wouldn't be able to come back and cause trouble for the townspeople. The tear gas's effect gradually wore off. Although a few more were added, it was a good thing they could hold up for a while. Without the command of the supergiant spider, the ordinary giant spiders weren't as agile, but they still kept the townspeople guarding the windows on edge. Locke approached the window, and bang, bang, bang. He quickly emptied the magazine of his M4A1, killing 7 or 8 spiders. The townspeople looked on in amazement and admiration. They had fought for ages, but the casualties they inflicted were less than what Locke had inflicted in just a few minutes. His marksmanship, honed through meditation and combat, was truly formidable, rivaling even the world's most elite. Locke seized the opportunity to encourage everyone, hold steady. FBI support will be arriving soon. After dealing with the spider's initial assault, Locke found Ashley and her brother sitting in a corner, eating free snacks from the shelves. Mike looked worried. "We should keep quiet. Spiders are easily attracted to vibrations, especially noise." Locke shook his head. This was already the most populated area in the town, and the spiders had already set their sights on it. It would be difficult to avoid attracting attention at this point. Armed with his M4A1, Locke didn't linger long, worried about the townspeople's ability to hold out. He instructed Mike, "If things get bad, take Ashley and find a sealed room to hide. This shouldn't be too difficult for you. Don't worry, I'm prepared." Mike nodded reassuringly, gesturing with a few bottles of perfume. Spiders have an exceptionally developed sense of smell. Perfume can confuse them. Locke nodded, gave Ashley another kiss, and returned to the second floor, just in time to see Samantha and her men carrying supplies. These were the various items Locke had asked Samantha to find. Locke planned to use them to make some simple incendiary bombs. In front of the shopping mall's main entrance lay an empty parking lot, and if these incendiary bombs worked, they would be enough to hold off the spiders for a while. "Everyone, do as I say. Put these things in these barrels." Locke stood guard at the window, directing the townspeople to make the incendiary bombs in real time. The townspeople flung the prepared incendiary bombs one by one, and flames quickly spread across the open space in front of the shopping mall, billowing black smoke. The townspeople on the second floor finally cheered as they watched the spiders scream and flee in the flames. As the flames surged, the air thickened with the aroma of meat. The giant spiders paused before the flames. As the wave of spiders thinned in the distance, Locke breathed a sigh of relief. After all, the number of these giant spiders was limited. They couldn't have unlimited food to reproduce endlessly over such a short period of time. Horror movies are horror movies, but reality always adheres to certain fundamental principles. After waiting for more than 20 minutes, Locke's satellite phone rang. It was FBI reinforcements, arriving by helicopter. They had also seen the flames in front of the shopping mall. The first batch of reinforcements consisted of 2 helicopters, carrying a total of 16 personnel. It seemed a small number, but upon arriving at the mall, they realized it was real. Honestly, at first, They had thought it was just a simple murder case. Locke had used his wealth to quickly mobilize the FBI, but in reality, there were only 16 of them. Fortunately, after arriving in Prosperity Town and observing the situation from the helicopter, the advance team quickly reported back, and the second batch of reinforcements would arrive within 2 hours. With the FBI's operatives, Locke felt relieved. At least there would be no problem in defending the shopping mall before the second batch of reinforcements arrived. The key was that the townspeople finally settled down, and the long night was finally coming to an end. Chapter 41 Comforting Myself. More than 2 hours later, a series of vehicles carrying heavily armed troops arrived in Prosperity Town. However, due to darkness, they were stationed outside the town, establishing a perimeter and temporary base. The next morning, the townspeople still at the shopping mall opened the gates and left. Most of the spiders, which hated sunlight, had disappeared. A large number of FBI agents appeared in the town, including soldiers and researchers, hoping to understand the origins of these giant spiders and perhaps conduct some research. Locke didn't care about these things. He took Ashley with him to record a statement. Let the FBI worry about what's next. They will definitely ask questions about this matter for a long time, but I have a special channel and I'm going to leave early. Do you want to come with me? Of course, Ashley said without hesitation. I've wanted to leave this town for a long time, but my mother, she should be with Chris. I heard that he followed the FBI into the mine to search and discovered new gold veins. Maybe this place will prosper again. That has nothing to do with me, Ashley said weakly. It hasn't stopped since yesterday. I want to find a place to rest first. You must take me with you when you leave. Of course, how could I forget our princess? But the town has not been searched yet and is under lockdown. If you want to rest, you can only camp in the suburbs, Locke smiled and said. Fortunately, we have the dedication of the missing Mayor Wade. The shopping center has special inflatable tents for camping. Ashley seemed to be in a better mood. Mayor Wade hasn't been found yet? What a pity. I will pray for him. After a thorough search, the FBI will arrange for the residents of the town to live near the shopping center first. Locke nodded. Thank you for your kindness and generosity. I hope he's happy in heaven or hell. The two of them ate a quick bite and set up camp near the shopping center. Ashley yawned, and she collapsed into the tent. Locke also slept for a while. When he woke up, he contacted the agents there, met with the commander, and brought Ashley and Samantha to meet for a while. The mother and daughter talked for a while. Perhaps worried about her mother and brother, Ashley, who had initially planned to leave with Locke, finally let Locke go alone. She said she would contact Locke again once her family was settled. After this incident, many people wanted to return home quickly, but the town wasn't completely safe yet. The FBI was still searching. The only good news that buoyed the townspeople was that Chris, while searching the mines with the FBI, had discovered a new vein of minerals, meaning that Prosperity Town could prosper again. This news meant nothing to Ashley. She didn't want to be like her mother, trapped in such a small town for the rest of her life at such a young age. As for the future of his childhood sweethearts, Samantha and Chris, Locke didn't care. Even though the discovery of the gold mine would likely make Chris a wealthy man, allowing the townspeople to enjoy a middle-class lifestyle, Locke arrived in Princeton early and had already purchased a property near the university a month and a half prior. This was where he would be living for many years, after all, and Locke had no intention of compromising himself, having already prepared and renovated the house. After a series of journeys, Locke made some renovations to his new home. Then drove to New York early the next morning to contact Tang Wei, who was already on summer vacation. I've read your book. The Arcane Throne has been very popular recently. It looks like you're going to be a famous author, Tang Wei congratulated Locke. Thank you. Thinking of his book, Locke felt a surge of joy. As time went by, his work's fame gradually spread, and with it came potential points. So far, he hadn't been willing to spend all the potential points he'd earned from writing books. You're quite a hard worker, actually, Locke said, glancing at the desk in the outer hall, which was covered in various books. For the past year, aside from Locke's occasional visits to New York, Tang Wei had devoted all his time to studying, his level of effort rivaling the sprint for the college entrance exams in the East. After all, I can't always rely on you. I have to at least be able to become a middle-class person on my own, Tang Wei said with a smile. Middle class? I didn't expect you to believe that. Why not? Seeing the teasing in Locke's eyes, Tang Wei couldn't help but roll his eyes. This is just a pseudo-concept created by capitalists, Locke laughed and teased. I thought you would be able to figure it out with the education you received in the East. The property in the bourgeoisie and the proletariat refers to the ownership of the means of production, while the so-called property of the middle class has been replaced by the property of property. Owning property does not mean owning assets, so most of the middle class are just proletarians with some money, especially those white-collar workers in the city. Compared with the proletariat, they just live in better decorated houses, drive better cars, and have slightly more refined clothes and food. They have no assets of their own and are essentially still working for others. Tang Wei. I feel like you have ruined my last good impression of the United States. No need to thank me, darling, Locke said with a smile. This world is just like that. If you think about it carefully, everyone understands. It's just that everyone chooses to ignore it. After all, people often need to resort to self-deception to comfort themselves. Tang Wei's lips twitched, finding this statement quite sensible. She was speechless and could only glare at Locke fiercely. Okay, I know. It's you, the big capitalist, who's been deceiving me all this time. Then you can choose to negotiate a multi-million-dollar deal with me now. Maybe that will make you feel better. You can always talk about that. Having been with Locke for a while now, Tang Wei can sometimes grasp the richness of his words. Ever since The Arcane Throne became a bestseller, some companies have gradually approached him. After all, its fantasy elements are strong and the plot is suitable for a TV series. However, Locke has no intention of selling the copyrights for film, television, or related products just yet. The revenue from these copyrights is far greater than that from simply selling books. If possible, Locke even plans to invest in the film and television production himself and make it a high-quality drama. In his past life, Locke's favorite thing to watch was HBO's American dramas. Unlike most free TV stations, this cable network media company doesn't rely on advertising, but rather subscriptions. Even with free channels, more and more American families will choose to pay to watch HBO's carefully crafted, high-quality dramas, rather than the mindless soap operas on free channels. HBO is a cable network owned by Time Warner, and the Little Wizard IP was also promoted by Time Warner, but any super-large media conglomerate can do similar things. If you become a significant shareholder, you can initiate a motion to promote your own work, just as you promoted The Little Wizard. Every bit of fame represents potential. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 The Only Problem. Are you free tomorrow night? Tomorrow night? Yes, Tang Wei was slightly taken aback, then asked, what's it about? A writer's gathering, Locke said. It's basically a bunch of idiots who use their pens to make money and get together to brag and gossip. It's not as cheesy as you say. Tang Wei rolled her eyes at Locke. American writers aren't all literary giants, Locke shrugged. In the US, even novels like Liu Bei's are wildly popular, which has spawned a large number of writers with quirky or unique themes. As long as they can sell, these writers are the publisher's favorites. Tang Wei's thinking is clearly still stuck in the Eastern perspective of this era, where writers are considered superior. While the US does have its fair share of masters who have written profound literary works, there are also many eccentric writers among them. Tang Wei didn't dwell on Locke's assessment of writers. In this country, there are so many things that challenge her childhood impressions. After a few words, the two gradually changed the subject. By the way, was there anything special about the Trinity Church we visited this afternoon while shopping? Tang Wei asked, suddenly thinking of what happened that afternoon. What's so special about it? It's just a church, just a little old. Locke didn't expect Tang Wei to notice anything unusual. But I've never seen you interested in churches or chapels. When you talk about God, you're not as respectful as many people are. You always say you believe in science, Tang Wei said. In all the time we've known each other, this is the first time I've seen you take the initiative to enter a church and even go out of your way to look around. It's really strange. I'm just interested in the church itself. I've read some information before, and that Trinity Church reminded me of some Masonic legends. It originated in Europe, but later, due to ideological disputes, some Freemasons came to America and founded a new order that has survived. I heard that Washington was a Freemason and that he founded that church. After seeing the church, I thought of these legends and was instantly intrigued, so I went in to take a look. Freemasonry is widely known in the West. Locke knew Tang Wei had no interest in such things, so after he said that, Tang Wei lost interest in further questioning, and Locke changed the subject. In fact, as Tang Wei said, he had no interest in God or the church. The reason he went in to visit Trinity Church after seeing it was naturally for the treasures inside. Trinity Church looked exactly like the one he'd seen in the Nicholas Treasure movie, National Treasure. If he remembered correctly, the entrance to the treasure was in the church's basement, concealed by a coffin in the wall. Another coffin served as the exit. Crucially, the treasure trove was virtually devoid of traps or traps. Once you found the right spot, exploring it was like taking a stroll in the countryside. The only problem was that Trinity Church was located in Lower Manhattan, not far from Broadway. Even at night, it was bustling with people, making stealthy removal of the massive treasure trove difficult. However, considering the numerous artworks depicted in the movie, as well as the boxes and boxes of jewelry, gold coins, and bars, these difficulties were minor. Locke, of course, couldn't tell Tang Wei about the treasure. He waited until Tang Wei fell asleep from the rocket ride before packing up and leaving the apartment. Then, taking advantage of the night, he made his way to the Broadway area in Lower Manhattan and quietly observed the surroundings. Whether in this life or the past, the West is rife with legends about Freemasonry. Europeans and Americans have all, at some point, heard of the Crusades and the Knights Templar. At their peak, the Templars were immensely powerful, threatening the royal and religious authority of several European nations. As the saying goes, everything goes to extremes, and then reverses. While Westerners may not have heard the saying "I won't allow others to sleep beside my bed," they certainly wouldn't tolerate such a massive power nearby. Consequently, the King of France united with the Church, sparking a bloody power struggle that spread across half of Europe, wiping out dozens of great lords in one fell swoop. This slaughter forced the remaining knights to flee to Eastern Europe or England. While those Templars who traveled to Eastern Europe ultimately met their doom, those who settled in England gained a foothold and gradually grew into a powerful secret organization. Many of the treasures depicted in the film National Treasure originate from the Treasure of Solomon, discovered 1,000 years ago by the Templars, who then transported the treasury to Europe and hid it. However, as the conflict between the Templars and the ruling classes of Europe deepened, the treasure's guardians, believing Europe was no longer safe, crossed the ocean and transported the treasure to the then wilderness of America. In a previous life, these tales of Freemasonry and treasure would have been mere legends. While many of these tales were true, the Masonic heritage had long been lost to time. Locke suspected that Freemasonry likely still existed in this world, simply because he hadn't encountered it yet. He didn't dwell on it, however. Any organization, with its long history, would inevitably have internal conflicts, especially one with such a long history. While powerful, they were likely fragmented and factionalized, and even faced challenges from the rise of new powers. They certainly couldn't, as some legends circulated, secretly control the world with their own hands. Finding a secluded corner, Locke, unseen, used his invisibility to stealthily slip into the church. The entire process went surprisingly smoothly. After all, the priests who had lived in the church for decades were unaware of the wealth treasured beneath their feet. Following his memory, Locke arrived at the basement of the church's boiler room. He soon found a tombstone engraved with a Masonic symbol and bearing the name of Parkinson Lane. This was clearly the entrance to the treasure from the film. Of course, he couldn't just smash the tombstone. Instead, he carefully pried it open with the tools he had brought. He then discovered a coffin hidden within. Pulling the coffin out and peering inside, Locke quickly discovered a passage leading to an unknown location. At this point, he was completely certain that the treasure lay within. While the treasure didn't have any special traps, its design was quite ingenious. Below the entrance, a spiral staircase descended hundreds of meters. The treasure was carried down by these stairs. At the bottom, there was a small room. This room contained a trap. Treasure hunters struggled to uncover the secret. Once they unlocked the trap and entered the imagined treasure chamber, they found only a few scattered wooden boxes, but no treasure at all. At this point, anyone would assume the treasure had likely been moved long ago. After all, the treasure is closely tied to the founder of the United States, and information about it might have already circulated there. But in reality, this room is the true entrance. To unlock it, you need the stone pipe. In the film, the pipe is hidden on a wooden ship in the Arctic Circle, But the film's plot doesn't reveal the ship's true location, nor does it explain how the protagonists found it. That's the only problem. Chapter 43 never let you down. Generally speaking, aside from the danger of descending the spiral staircase, the most crucial issue is that even if Locke could reach the entrance and find the secret chamber, he wouldn't be able to open the stone wall. So, Locke chose another path. That was the exit to the treasure. This was the alternative Locke had envisioned, and the location of the exit was incredibly simple, completely unpredictable to those unaware of the situation. This place contained numerous coffins of prominent Freemasons, and the exit was located behind the second tombstone to the right of the entrance, capitalizing on the principle of darkness beneath the light. It could be said that the architect of this treasure burial was adept at exploiting this human psychology. After a moment's deliberation, Locke restored Parkinson Lane's coffin and carefully replaced the entrance tombstone. Once he was sure there was no sign of any problem, he carefully opened the exit tombstone. Unlike the previous tombstone, this one revealed no coffin, only a narrow stone cave. Without hesitation, Locke climbed in. About a dozen meters ahead, the passageway widened, and stone steps appeared. Following the stone steps, after a full half hour, Locke came upon a stone wall. He searched the surroundings but found no switches. Clearly, the stone wall could only be opened from the inside, meaning only by entering from the entrance could he reach the buried treasure. He checked his watch. It was already past 3 in the morning. If he continued, it wouldn't be long before the church staff would be up and working. With this in mind, Locke quickly returned, climbed out of the passage, and carefully replaced the tombstone. After a thorough inspection to ensure no traces had been left, he quietly left the church and headed back to his apartment. Lying back in bed, Locke began to consider how to retrieve the treasure. He first ruled out using explosives to blast the stone door open, as he couldn't guarantee the underground cavern containing the treasure would be strong enough. If it collapsed, not only would he be unable to retrieve the treasure, but Locke would also likely be buried without time to escape. Even if the chances were slim, Locke didn't want to take the risk. He even preferred not to report the news to the U.S. government. The finder of the treasure receives 10% of its total value. Based on the value of the treasure in the movie, it's worth at least tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars. But this only yields dollars. Furthermore, the treasure is mostly gold, jewelry, and artwork. As a nobody, Locke is absolutely certain that the U.S. government will tamper with the valuation. This means the price won't just be reduced tenfold, but tens or even hundreds of times. The U.S. government never disappoints in this regard. Holding the still sleeping Tang Wei in his arms, Locke began to recall the plot of the movie, trying to find clues to the pipe. Unfortunately, all he could determine was that the key to the mechanism was on a wooden cargo ship in the Arctic Circle. With no specific location, searching for it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. After a long moment of contemplation, Locke still had no idea how to find the ship. He was distraught for a long time, and even as darkness gradually faded, he couldn't fall asleep. He simply got up, changed his clothes, and went out for a run. "Hey, Locke." After running for a while, he heard a female voice from behind. "Good morning, Monica." Locke turned and waved to the girl who greeted him. It was none other than Monica from Friends. These days, Locke kept running into her on his morning jogs. Over the past year, Locke had been visiting Tang Wei in New York from time to time, and the two of them would sometimes go to bars, so naturally, he'd gotten to know this regular. Monica, a true chubby girl in high school, was now in great shape. Achieving this required not only dieting but also consistent, intense exercise. "I heard you're going to college soon." The two continued their run, chatting. After not seeing each other for a while, Monica thought Locke looked even more handsome. "Yes, Princeton University. It's only a 2 or 3 hour drive from New York. That's great. That way, you and Alice, Tang Wei, can be together more often, right? That way, we can avoid a long-distance relationship." In the US, even 3-year-olds know that long-distance relationships are relationship killers, and even jokes about US Marines are still circulating online. These people drift, often out of touch, their wives or girlfriends absent, expending their excess energy abroad. Just like when George Cooper first met Sheldon's friend Dan, he nervously asked if Dan's mother's name was Kim Lee, and was greatly relieved when he was told no. Even amidst their carefree lives, they faced challenges at home, like the constant presence of lawn mowers and plumbers. This kind of plot is a popular theme in the San Fernando Valley. Playboys like Joey and Barney also love to target these desperate housewives whose husbands are constantly away, seeking solace in their loneliness. The West clearly distinguishes between heart and love, even occasional infidelity being considered definitive proof of marital fault. This is partly due to the sheer number of similar cases. If Eastern values were to hold true, the divorce rate, already at 64%, would skyrocket. They could only come up with a new story: your husband, wife, loves you, but their hormones got out of control and they made a mistake common to both men and women. You should be generous and forgive him, her. Once this story became widely accepted, marriage counselors could openly offer comfort. This kind of thing is too common, and if you want to live a decent life, you have to have some infidelity on your head. By persuading people to be more open-minded, they could barely suppress the high divorce rate and maintain people's faith in family. Monica, of course, didn't know the true relationship between Locke and Tang Wei. She was just glad he was able to come to New York. Why didn't you choose Columbia University so you could be in the same school with Alice? I chose mathematics. Princeton University's mathematics department is one of the best in the country, Locke explained directly. Alice told me you're a genius, a math Olympiad champion. Unlike my brother, who scored 1,250 on the SATs but kept bragging about getting 1,450, Monica had always disliked her brother. She'd always wanted to be a chef, so she skipped college after high school, a fact Ross constantly teased her about. Thanks for the compliment, but I'm still a long way from a true genius, Locke said with a smile. I know two true geniuses. They were only 11 years old, and they're already going to Princeton like me. Really? Monica was shocked. Of course, Peggy Swanson and Sheldon Cooper. I knew them in high school. At this point, Locke suddenly had an idea. Speaking of which, Monica, would you be interested in trying out a temporary guardianship? Temporary guardianship? Monica was confused by Locke's sudden change of subject. Chapter 44, A Heinous Crime. The idea of recommending Monica as Peggy's temporary guardian was a sudden one, but it quickly became clear to Locke that it was a good one. Monica has a good personality, is kind and generous, and has a strong sense of responsibility, making her well-suited to caring for others. Whether it was their brief encounter in this life or as she'd shown in a previous life on Friends, Monica was a good choice. Peggy's arrival at Princeton University would undoubtedly require a temporary guardian, and Sheldon had already chosen Beverly. Rather than finding someone he didn't know well and couldn't confirm was suitable, Locke felt it was better to choose Monica as Peggy's temporary guardian. Sorry, this is so sudden. I think I might need to think about it, Monica said after Locke detailed Peggy's situation. Monica loved children, but Locke's sudden suggestion left her unsure how to respond. It's okay. There's no rush. Linda will bring Peggy over next month, and I can introduce you to her then. Believe me, you'll definitely like Peggy. After hesitating for a moment, Monica nodded. Okay, I'll meet with Ms. Linda and Peggy. We can discuss the temporary guardianship later. Monica glanced at Locke. Not wanting to say no, she agreed to meet Linda and Peggy first and decide later. Excellent. I knew you were a kind and beautiful girl, Locke said with a smile. Mr. and Mrs. Swanson and Peggy will definitely like you. Thank you for your kind words. Feeling elated by Locke's praise, Monica glanced at Locke again. By the way, have you had breakfast yet? No, Locke said. I'm going to grab some breakfast from a random place later. Why don't you come over to my place? I need to make breakfast too, Monica invited. Really? Well, I'm welcome. After tasting your pastries last time, I knew you were a skilled chef, comparable to those at Michelin-starred restaurants. You're flattering. I'm still far from those chefs, but I'm always working hard to get there. Believe me, they have a lot to learn from you, Locke said. I've tried all the famous restaurants in New York, so I can definitely speak for myself. At Monica's invitation, Locke arrived at her apartment. While Monica prepared breakfast, Locke took a quick look around. It was a typical two-bedroom, one living room apartment with a balcony. As Locke stood by the window, looking out, the door to one of the bedrooms opened. Monica, breakfast is ready. Oh, hi, Locke. Turning around, Locke saw a blonde girl in pajamas. It was Monica's roommate, Phoebe. Good morning, Phoebe, Locke greeted Phoebe. Locke, Alice didn't even tell us when you came to New York. Phoebe smiled and came over to Locke. Even though Locke doesn't have any intentions, it's nice to get a little closer to a handsome guy. It's only been 2 days. Monica and I ran into each other this morning, and she invited me over for breakfast. Yeah, glad you came. It's been about 2 weeks since you were last in New York, exactly 13 days. Hey, Monica." As they were talking, Chandler, still sporting a full beard, pushed open the door. "Hi, Chandler, good morning. Did you hear? The bar downstairs might be closing next month and turning into a cafe," Chandler said. "One of those cafes that only sells coffee?" Phoebe asked. "What else do they buy?" Chandler complained. "I can't believe anyone thinks cafes are better than bars. Do they want us to hang out in cafes all day, drinking coffee and chatting? That's lame." "Yeah, cafes are way worse than bars, and the bar is right downstairs, so convenient," Monica agreed. "I can't believe they were going to turn a bar into a cafe. If that's true, I'll never go there," Phoebe agreed loudly. "If they really do that, we'll file a complaint," Chandler said without hesitation. Monica didn't respond, but just looked at Chandler, because she knew that Chandler wasn't the type to start a troublemaking incident. Sure enough, Chandler just yelled, then looked at Monica's eyes, smiled awkwardly, and stopped talking. "How's your roommate's search going?" Monica changed the subject at the right time. "Very good," Chandler smiled with satisfaction. "That handsome Italian guy?" Monica perked up when she heard this. "No," Chandler shook his head decisively, "it's the very artistic photographer who appeared later." "Oh my God, why not choose that handsome Italian guy? He is very stylish." After saying that, he glanced at Locke, although he's a little worse than Locke, because the photographer said he would often bring models. Chandler explained the reason why he made the choice. His sister is a porn actress, but that handsome Italian guy is handsome, Monica said unwillingly. "His eyes are very seductive, especially when he says hello with unique emphasis." The photographer's sister is a porn actress. Chandler insisted on his choice. For a single man, this reason is enough. Not wanting to continue the conversation, Chandler turned the topic to Locke. "Hey, Locke, how long are you planning on staying in New York this time?" "About a month, and I think I'll be coming to New York more often later because I'm going to college nearby." "What university?" "Columbia University." Like Alice, Chandler piqued his interest. "That way we're alumni." "No, I chose Princeton. It's only a little over 100 kilometers from New York." Locke shook his head. "I'll come to New York often." "Princeton, it suits you perfectly." Chandler paused. "Why, don't you want to go to the same school as Alice?" Although Columbia is a top public university in the United States, it's still a step down from Princeton, which is the main reason Locke chose. "Locke chose Princeton because its math department is top-notch," Monica explained. "He's a true academic genius, far superior to my brother who still brags about his SAT scores." At this point, Monica looked at Locke and stopped thinking about the handsome Italian boy. She just felt that fate had been cruel to him, that such a handsome boy was so much younger than her. Europeans and Americans mature early, looking older at 15 or 16. High school students, college students, and adults are often indistinguishable from their appearance. Young men and women already working, like Monica, usually date someone their own age, rather than someone still in school. Of course, if they're truly attracted to each other, that's another story. Sheldon's older brother, George Jr., had his first child with a woman nearly 10 years his senior. Initially, George Jr. concealed his age because the woman was a former weather forecaster, and the crime was truly heinous. Chapter 45 I Should Fire My Stockbroker. After chatting with him for a while longer at Monica's apartment, Locke finally left, carrying the breakfast he had brought to Tangway. From their conversation, Locke knew Chandler's best friend and roommate would be in place soon, but Rachel would likely have to wait a year or two. For the past year, whenever Locke visited New York, he'd go to the bar with them for drinks and conversation. So far, no missions had triggered, which reminded Locke of the Fuzz Hong Building robbery and the Prosperity Town robbery. Combining this with previously completed missions, Locke had a vague idea of how the system triggered missions, but it still required some experimentation. "I didn't expect your custom dress to fit so well." Standing in front of the dressing mirror, Tangway looked herself up and down. Locke's custom dress was beautiful, perfectly showcasing her best features. It was clear that Locke had a thorough understanding of her measurements, having meticulously measured her with his own hands. Tangway had been busy all day preparing for the writer's dinner that evening. Locke's stylist had meticulously attended to every detail, constantly making subtle adjustments even when she felt it was perfect. Even this busy schedule had dissipated some of her anxiety. Thus, those who invested in my project in the past have seen returns beyond their wildest dreams, the man Locke had been chatting with said at the dinner. Martin Channing, before him, spoke relentlessly about his investments, and Locke realized that the Ponzi scheme lord seemed to have his sights on him. Of the $640 million he'd secured from the Fuzz Hong building, over $400 million, minus necessary handling fees, had been transferred to a family fund, which Locke had inherited without publicizing the fact. Even now, he'd successfully doubled that sum, and few, aside from his stockbroker, knew he had amassed a multi-million-dollar fortune. Martin Channing's actions had given Locke some reason to suspect he'd spent the entire summer in New York, rather than traveling like other high school graduates, to sort out some matters. The U.S. tax rate is high, especially for profits from the stock market or other financial investments. However, such investment profits are not taxed until they're withdrawn for personal use. Financial investments only have stamp duty, no other taxes. Because financial investments are very risky and often result in losses, if you make a profit, you have to pay nearly half of it in tax. So, when you lose money, do you get a tax refund? It's nice to talk to you about this. If I have time, I'd like to learn more about your fund, Locke said with a smile. No problem, I'll have my assistant send you the information. Oh, no problem, Locke said with a smile, ending his conversation with Martin Channing. Then, he whispered in Tang Wei's ear, I think I should fire my current stockbroker. Fire my stockbroker? Why? Tang Wei was taken aback. Locke smiled without explaining, continuing to chat with the people he met at the party. With the men, he talked about economics and mocked the government. With the women, he talked about fashion and art, in short, all kinds of bragging and gossip. Time slipped by unnoticed. He and Tang Wei returned to their quarters that evening. After Tang Wei fell asleep, Locke returned to Trinity Church. This time, the entry went smoothly. Locke had purchased his equipment during the day and rappelled down to the bottom, unwilling to tread the corroded wooden staircase for 2 centuries. As for the pipe, he had figured out a way to get it. It wasn't difficult at all he needed was the shape and dimensions of the pipe on the mechanism, and crafting one shouldn't be difficult. As for notifying the U.S. government, that should wait until Locke had secured all the gold, jewelry, and other easily portable items from the treasure. Of course, it would be best to keep it a secret. While the individual, massive artworks might be valuable, a large number of them wouldn't be so easy to conceal or sell. Smaller pieces could be easily sold, like Ant's moving house. Larger pieces, however, were a different matter. They needed to be stored in a suitable location, and selling them would be difficult. Regardless of the potential price, with so many large pieces, if he wasn't careful, he'd face all sorts of challenges. Locke might have the money, but he hadn't yet established the necessary connections, and the resulting hassles would likely leave him feeling overwhelmed. As for transporting the items, it wasn't as difficult as he'd imagined. After all, Locke had storage space, especially after discovering the treasure, which he had expanded to 5 cubic meters. Locke thought it best to leave these inconvenient items here, saving him from potential trouble. Even if a future treasure hunter found this place, they wouldn't be able to contact Locke. However, the thought of the U.S. government being so easily taken advantage of in the future still made Locke feel uneasy. With this in mind, Locke went to the keyhole of the pipe, took out the measuring instruments he'd prepared, and began measuring. Then, combining the keychain with the image in his memory, he sketched the pipe piece by piece. Once he was sure it was right, he took out the materials and tools he'd prepared and set to work. Once he was finished, Locke inserted the pipe and, following the instructions in the movie, gave it a half-turn clockwise before pressing it down. The next moment, a creaking sound echoed from within the stone wall, and a new passage appeared before Locke's eyes. Instead of lighting the oil near the escalator as in the film, Locke produced several high-powered lighting rods. As the treasure room lit up, dozens of bronze, gold, and stone statues, as well as gold utensils, appeared at a glance. This was only a small portion. What caught Locke's attention most was the center of the treasure room, where dozens of rotten, damaged wooden chests reflected the light. Gold, diamonds, and jewels gleamed in the light. As Locke approached, he saw over a dozen white diamonds the size of pigeon eggs, along with thumb-sized piles of red, pink, blue, and yellow diamonds and gemstones. Beyond that, a vast pile of gold coins lay piled high. Stepping on them, Locke felt as if he were walking on a mountain of gold. These coins were primarily minted in various European countries in the 17th and 18th centuries. Due to their large circulation, they were not particularly rare, and their antique value was limited. Nevertheless, there was a significant amount. Locke took a quick glance and estimated that the pile, if piled together, must have weighed at least 7 or 8 tons. At the time of Locke's time travel, it would have been worth at least $1 billion. Reaching the pile of gems, Locke casually picked up a red diamond. He examined it and felt it was even larger than the largest known color diamond, the 59.9-carat pastel star. Moreover, red diamonds are even more valuable than pink diamonds. If auctioned in the future, they could fetch hundreds of millions of dollars. In addition, there were various rubies, topaz, and sapphires. Seeing these gems and examining them carefully, Locke was even more excited than the diamonds. These gems were the finest materials suitable for crafting the Lord of the Rings. Artificial gems could not be used as alchemical materials. The gems here were countless times better than the rubies he had purchased for the Lord of the Rings for $6 million. With a wave of his hand, Locke quickly stored the diamonds and gems into his storage space. Checking the time, he realized he was running out of time, so he simply waved his hand again to fill the storage space with gold coins. Then, Locke retraced his steps, quickly returned to the entrance via rope mechanism, and carefully left the church. If nothing unexpected happened, Locke would have to go in and out at least a dozen times during his time in New York before he could remove all the treasures he needed. Chapter 46 Winning the lawsuit is not important. In Locke's previous life, when he traveled through time, many Wall Street companies had effectively moved out of the city. The name itself had become a symbol. These days, any company located on Wall Street conveys the impression of wealth. America may seem teeming with wealthy individuals, but even at the time Locke traveled through time, according to Forbes, there were only 500 or 600 individuals with fortunes exceeding $100 million. Of course, we also have to consider the various methods some wealthy individuals employ to conceal their assets, so this number could be doubled. Add to that the seemingly modest assets of those who, thanks to hidden assets like charitable trusts, antiques, and overseas wealth, are no less than billionaires. Overall, the total number of these wealthy individuals is perhaps no more than 2,000. Locke is now one of these wealthy individuals. After the funds he obtained from the Fuzzy Hong building were legally transferred to his name, he hired a Wall Street stockbroker to manage them. This stockbroker's authority is limited, and any minor fund transfer requires Locke's approval. Locke only needs an executor to follow his orders, not a salesperson who can tell him which stocks to buy. These professionals might possess excellent professional ethics, but to test their professionalism with large sums of money was foolish. To avoid similar problems, Locke had strictly limited his access when he hired him, and he conducted regular audits. While checking his accounts over the past few days, Locke hadn't discovered any instances of his stockbroker misappropriating funds for investment. However, Martin Channing's enthusiasm for him at the banquet that day had convinced Locke that his information had been leaked. After all, his official income as a writer had only reached a few $100,000, hardly enough to allow Martin Channing, who had reached $1 million threshold, to covertly promote his fund. Locke didn't know what the stockbroker had exchanged his information for, perhaps a generous reward or perhaps the friendship of Martin Channing, an investor who had risen to prominence on Wall Street in the past 2 years. He didn't need to find out, he simply fired his stockbroker and hired a lawyer to pursue a lawsuit against him for leaking his information. The sufficiency of the evidence and the likelihood of a successful lawsuit were unimportant, the key was to completely tarnish the reputation of this unruly individual. After all, no one wants to hire someone who leaked their personal information as their stockbroker. Wall Streeters are incredibly greedy and possess flexible moral compasses. Locke is simply making his stance clear to instill a sense of caution in those who will work for him in the future. This may not completely prevent problems, but it will at least reduce their frequency. In his previous life, Locke had managed to change his fate through his hard work, but for most of his life he was an ordinary person, which led him to prefer discounted items when shopping. Only when his finances gradually became more abundant did he begin to believe that money is meant to be spent. Instead of focusing on saving, he began to consider how to make more money from his existing funds. Ordinary people lack the capital or skills to undertake such an endeavor, and can only carefully guard their meager wealth, fearing that a sudden crisis could lead to bankruptcy. The so-called money-making money strategy is generally only suitable for the wealthy, not for the average person. Trying to follow this path will likely lead to disaster. In this money game, Locke, in his previous life, remained a mere novice, barely even reaching the threshold. But in this life, His knowledge of future trends has made him a true investment genius. He doubled his investment of over $400 million in a single year, allowing Locke to take Tang Wei shopping without a second thought about price tags. Fifth Avenue is full of high-end brand stores, and competition is fierce. These luxury items are affordable for the average middle class with a little effort. For example, a Dior women's dress typically costs between a few hundred and $2,000, roughly the equivalent of a typical American middle class's monthly income. Tang Wei was wearing a pink skirt today, which didn't match her blue top, and most importantly, it wasn't a famous brand. The clerk, without a hint of skepticism, thoughtfully recommended a suitable pairing for her, following Locke's request. In boutiques like these, the focus isn't just on the women's shopping experience, but also on the men accompanying them. After all, in most cases, these men are the ones who pay the bills. While waiting for Tang Wei to try on clothes, Locke sat on a sofa in the corner, sipping coffee served by the waiter, his eyes scanning the shelves of handbags. Coming out of the dressing room, Tang Wei was now dressed in a white suit, black high heels, and her long hair tied up in a bun. Her demeanor was completely different, giving her the air of a shrewd, capable office lady. Standing in front of the full-length mirror, Tang Wei struck a few poses, took a few steps, and then nodded in satisfaction. The heels I tried on earlier had 7 centimeters, and I wasn't used to them, so I switched to these 5-centimeter ones. No problem, this is fine. Let's go with this one, Locke nodded, gesturing to the handbag shelf. Next, I'll pick out the right bag. Many men can't understand why women love bags. A few scraps of leather with a zipper can easily fetch a high price, and they can only lament how easy it is to make money from women. Locke couldn't understand it either, but that didn't stop him from supporting women's choices at this moment. After watching Tang Wei browse for a long time, finally settling on a black handbag, Locke told the clerk, "Pack these up first. I'll send them to your place after you've tried them all on." Tang Wei wasn't the type to indulge in shopping. Aside from a brief moment of infatuation when she first met Locke, she had mostly been very restrained when it came to luxury goods. For the past year, Locke had given Tang Wei $2,000 a month, excluding tuition, but she'd saved half of that, never buying expensive luxury items herself. Most of her more expensive clothes and jewelry were bought by Locke, just like the formal suits he'd bought Tang Wei this time, as a preparation for what was to come. Truth be told, Locke's image was different from what Tang Wei had initially imagined. She'd assumed Locke was a wealthy second-generation kid, but only later discovered he was an orphan who'd grown up in an orphanage. She had no idea where he got all that money, but he spent it like water. When he'd given her tuition, he'd simply stuffed $20,000 into a leather bag and tossed it to her, as if it were nothing but paper. Chapter 47 Respect Your Financial Strength. Locke didn't know what Tang Wei was thinking. He honestly felt like he had little money to spend. He didn't have a luxurious estate to maintain, annual property taxes to pay, or planes or yachts to pay for. His monthly expenses barely matched the average daily growth of his investments. In his previous life, he'd been an ordinary person. Barring unexpected events, if he'd become truly wealthy, he'd probably have been busy buying a mansion on the Upper East Side, a beachfront villa, or even spending tens of millions of dollars on a toy airplane. But after discovering magic, the allure of these things became irrelevant to Locke. His main reason for persisting in investing was to become one of the few who controlled the resources. If Tony Stark weren't incredibly wealthy, with connections in the US government and military, how could he have the financial resources to directly declare himself Iron Man and resist pressure to hand over the Iron Man suit and energy reactor technology? If his true identity were ever to leak, only those of his own social class would consider a conversation, rather than outright violence. Leaving the boutique, Locke said, "When we get home, change into the clothes you bought today. Next, you need to learn the gait and tone of voice of a white-collar woman on Wall Street. You look like a complete novice now. Didn't you say you wanted to experience the working world in advance? If so, I'll definitely help you. I just feel you have ulterior motives." Tang Wei rolled her eyes at Locke. "Who has ulterior motives? You should speak with integrity." Locke spoke righteously, yet secretly regretted not having a shorter skirt so Tang Wei could try it out at home. Perhaps she could have a few custom-made ones later? Where to go next? Having bought what she wanted, Tang Wei felt satisfied. She had always envied independent career women. Her original goal was to become a professional at a large company, but even with Locke, she knew she couldn't simply rely on him. To achieve this goal, she was currently working extremely hard at her studies, and she wasn't as enthusiastic about fashion as her female classmates. Let's buy a car first. I'm going to be living in New York, and the used car I brought over from Texas isn't suitable, so I'm going to sell it and buy another one, Locke said. Hearing this, Tang Wei said, wait a minute, since you're not driving anymore, just give it to me. Yeah, I forgot you didn't have a car yet. Locke patted his forehead. In that case, I'll buy you one too. No need. Tang Wei tried to refuse, but Locke pulled her around the waist and kissed her gently on the lips. Okay, do as I say. Arriving at the dealership, Locke first selected a stylish sports car for Tang Wei, suitable for a woman, and then bought himself a high-end Mercedes-Benz commercial vehicle, spending a total of $146,000. In his previous life in the East, he'd felt that people were gradually becoming materialistic, but in this life, living in the capitalist society of the United States, he realized that Americans are even more materialistic and more concerned with appearances. The United States is the world's largest consumer of luxury goods and luxury cars, and Americans are known for their ostentation, especially white-collar workers in major cities. Even if they've always relied on credit cards to get by, they still want to appear wealthy. University serves as a gateway between school and society, and most students have already begun to experience the ways of society. As a Chinese, Tang Wei already faces some ostracism, so now it's even more important to demonstrate his financial resources to gain respect. As for respect for workability and noble character, since most people around him are ordinary people, it's easier to gain respect for your financial strength. After paying with a credit card, the subsequent procedures for car insurance, license plates, and other related matters are handled by dedicated personnel. The dealership has a dedicated person to contact you, and delivery can be arranged to your door the next day. Unlike in the East, these luxury cars in the United States are not expensive, mainly due to extremely low customs duties. However, the subsequent maintenance costs are higher. To this end, Locke agreed to give Tang Wei an extra $1,000 per month for gas and maintenance. After buying the car, the two sat down at a Starbucks on Wall Street. Locke ordered an unsweetened Americano and looked out at the street. Now's the time to observe the white-collar workers you pass by and learn from them. It won't be long before you're one of them, so, you'll soon be one of those Wall Street bastards who'll do anything for a buck. Tang Wei laughed. Are you planning on starting a financial company? To be more precise, I'm acquiring a suitable company. It has to have a financial license. It takes a long time for a newly established company to get one, and I don't want to wait any longer. Acquire? A company like this isn't cheap, is it? Tang Wei thought for a moment and asked. If it's a regular financial company, it's certainly not cheap, but the fund I'm acquiring doesn't need to be huge, it can even have just a few employees. All it needs is a financial license and no hidden debt. Ever since arriving in this world and escaping the hurdles of survival, Locke had considered how to become a Wall Street player. Every day, someone tries to break into Wall Street, and every day, someone leaves in frustration. Those who manage to stay here respectably are securities traders, investment bankers, risk managers, financial analysts, and lawyers, all possessing exceptional financial acumen. These individuals engage in deception, resorting to any means necessary for the sole purpose of profit. A prime example is Martin Channing, whom Locke had met at a writer's dinner a few days ago. If his memory serves him correctly, this is the father of Caroline Channing from Two Broke Girls, who will be jailed for an illegal Ponzi scheme in 7 or 8 years. Of course, he's already engaged in this business, and he's only just getting started. Considering the dynamics of the stock market, Locke suspects that Martin Channing will likely encounter a Nasdaq crash, with investors withdrawing their funds en masse and the loopholes unable to be remedied, leading to his downfall. Otherwise, his scam could have continued for many more years. On Wall Street, everyone knows that returns over 5% are a warning sign, and returns over 10% inevitably come with significant risk. It's impossible to guarantee a profit. Many understand this, yet many still succumb to the temptation and invest in Martin Channing's fund, driven by the high returns, even though making money isn't easy. What Locke was about to do was somewhat similar to what Martin Channing had done. However, before considering how to design his own fund, securing a professional license was paramount. To directly acquire a legal company with all the necessary paperwork, one would have to pay a price exceeding its assets. Therefore, it was best if the company was near bankruptcy, which would allow for a better price. Of course, The company also had to be free of further problems. To this end, Locke had already contacted intermediaries, hoping to find a suitable company. Chapter 48, Still Don't Know What You Missed. Many Wall Street firms, such as the well-known McKinsey & Company, Boston Consulting Group, and PricewaterhouseCoopers, operate as middlemen. Locke approached PricewaterhouseCoopers, and after stating his requirements, they quickly shortlisted 7 or 8 firms that met his requirements. These firms all possessed comprehensive financial licenses and held debts under $1 million. Quickly reviewing the information provided by the middle-aged salesperson, Locke casually said, "Don't leave out anything. I need you to review it again and confirm there are no issues, especially any undiscovered debts or lawsuits. By the way, I won't pay a single cent. How much you want to earn from this deal depends on your skills and the commission you can extract from the other party." These consulting firms, acting as middlemen, were similar to the shady intermediaries rumored online in Eastern China in his previous life, profiting on both sides. With the idea of trying both sides before they could even get a chance, he made this request. Tang Wei hadn't expected Locke to make such a request, and to not even pay. It was outrageous. Unexpectedly, after a moment of silence, the middle-aged salesman, Robert, smiled and said, "Sir, I can agree to your request. I guarantee I can have the owners of these companies standing before you within 2 hours. The price will definitely be right, but I'll need your cooperation." This reaction left Tang Wei stunned. The other party actually agreed to what she considered to be a somewhat outrageous condition. As for the other request, it wasn't difficult either. It simply meant to show that Locke chose to buy the company because of Robert's strong recommendation. Locke was planning to purchase a company on the verge of bankruptcy. Those who had failed in their investments and were even in debt were eager for investment, or even to sell the company outright, freeing themselves from the burden of running it themselves. At this point, consulting firms acting as middlemen naturally demanded a commission. Tang Wei's surprise was simply due to lack of understanding of the rules. To be honest, Tang Wei couldn't understand why Locke insisted on buying a near-bankrupt financial company instead of one that was operating normally. As for the question of middleman fees, who would want to transfer the debt to someone else and get some money back from a company that was already worthless? Wall Street is teeming with financial firms, and while there's no shortage of those on the verge of bankruptcy, there's a shortage of willing buyers. So even if this salesperson demanded double the fee, as long as they could wipe out hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, the owners of these companies would accept. Robert had initially suspected Locke of being a wealthy second-generation entrepreneur, given his youthful appearance. He'd hoped that if he didn't know the rules, he could exploit him and make a few extra bucks. But now that Locke was clearly acting like a seasoned professional, he'd shift his focus to those eager to sell their companies. It's no secret that the most costly thing in the world is wealthy second-generation entrepreneurs, and almost everyone wants to cash in on them. Locke's approach was actually a time-saving measure. Simply applying for various licenses and permits to start a new company requires significant time and effort. Without sufficient connections, obtaining licenses quickly would be a significant expense. Sometimes the cost even exceeds the cost of acquiring a fully documented, ready-made financial company willing to assume debt. In Locke's view, as long as he could quickly secure a shell company capable of raising capital, even if he invested a little more, the time saved would yield a greater return. After negotiating with a consulting firm's salesperson, Locke nodded. "Excellent, Assistant Alice, leave me your contact information. Call me when you find a suitable company." Throughout the conversation, Locke acted like a wealthy man, and his attire was enough to convince everyone. Tang Wei nodded, flashing a professional smile, and handed over her prepared business card. This was her current position, and it also served as part of her summer internship. After leaving the consulting firm, Tang Wei, enduring the pain of wearing high heels for so long, returned to the car with Locke. After fastening his seatbelt, he rubbed his aching heel and asked, "What happened just now? Why did they agree to your terms? And you even said you could handle debt up to $1 million. This is all for investment needs. After all, getting a registered investment advisor license from the SEC isn't easy. There are a lot of procedures involved. But if I acquire a company directly, I can provide investment advisory services directly to investors. In other words, I can legitimately attract public funds for investment, and incurring limited debt is also cost-effective." "Well, it seems you've decided to become a Wall Street vampire." Tang Wei, a finance major, naturally understood what Locke was up to. Of course, and I believe those who invest in my company in the future will be very satisfied because I can help them make money, Locke said confidently. Ah, that's a nice idea, but if anyone could make money investing, there wouldn't be so many poor people in this world. With some familiarity with finance, Tang Wei knew that making money in finance wasn't easy at all. It was more likely to become a pile of bones on the road to success. Locke certainly knew the investment and financial management industry was challenging, otherwise, Mr. Martin Channing wouldn't have run a Ponzi scheme. But after so many years of rebirth, Locke had determined that the overall financial trends in this world mirror those in his previous life. This meant he could tell which companies had growth potential and what investments would yield profits. Okay, don't worry. Once I get the company, you can just be my assistant. Locke was in a good mood, his tone relaxed. You'll just need to help me deliver the information and pass on the orders. When you graduate, I can give you 2% of the options. The dividends alone will make you a millionaire. Millionaire, Tang Wei rolled his eyes at Locke. Right now, I'm just praying the company doesn't go bankrupt. It's better to just give me a higher salary. Won't you really give me more thought? Locke finished, only to see Tang Wei shake his head without hesitation. He didn't care, shrugging his shoulders. No problem. I hope you won't regret it later. You might not even realize what you've missed. Thank you, but thanks, Tang Wei said without hesitation. Then let's follow the previous agreement. A 6-month internship, a base salary of $150 per week. After the internship, a base salary of $350. Bonuses will be paid according to industry regulations, Locke said. No problem. That's it. Seeing that Locke hadn't moved, Tang Wei said, let's go get lunch now. I just had a piece of bread this morning, and I'm starving. What else could Locke say? He started the car and skillfully merged into the traffic, setting his sights on a good Sichuan restaurant. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 Lunch and Information. These days, most Chinese restaurants are clustered around Chinatown, not far from Wall Street, but the area is mostly low-income. When Locke entered the restaurant, he saw a Latino woman with 2 4-year-old children, one of whom was holding a baby, trying to use baby vouchers to offset her bill. The restaurant owner didn't refuse. These vouchers were government-issued and, according to regulations, could only be used to purchase baby products, but in reality, businesses often turned a blind eye when they were used to buy other products or pay bills. This is also how some of the lower-income Americans survive. Simply having 3 or 4 children can easily net them thousands of dollars in welfare checks, along with a ton of baby vouchers. Some parents, fueled by these lucrative benefits, even choose to live off the land rather than continue to toil. Hundreds of billions of dollars in various welfare benefits are spent annually in the United States, contributing to the continued expansion and rise in the proportion of black people in the country. After choosing a seat and settling in, the waiter placed a menu on the table and waited for Locke to take his order. He expertly switched to Chinese. Give me a kung pao chicken and a serving of mapo tofu. My friend can't handle spicy food, so use less. Also, a bowl of mutton offal soup. No modified dishes, just authentic Chinese food. Food is, after all, subjective. Chinese cuisine, popular around the world, has been modified to suit local tastes. Local customs and local conditions shape people, and food is highly subjective. Locke has even heard that people in some African and Southeast Asian countries use bananas as a staple. Just like Americans prefer sweet foods, the sweetness in their dishes is noticeably higher. Locke said this to avoid trying what he considered to be strangely flavored dishes. Tang Wei had discovered this restaurant, and the chef's Chinese food was excellent, especially the mutton offal soup that had just been served. Watching Locke slurp down the mutton offal soup with relish, Tang Wei couldn't help but wonder, you don't really look American. At least I've never seen an American enjoy mutton offal. Maybe I was from Eastern China in a previous life, Locke shrugged nonchalantly. Due to different dietary habits, in the U.S., things like pig offal, chicken feet, and pig's trotters are rarely eaten, they're simply thrown away upon slaughter. I heard some merchants later found ways to sell these items directly to Asia and made a killing. Unfortunately, the people of Eastern China aren't wealthy enough right now, so it's unclear how successful the business will be. The boss's second dish was mapo tofu. Tang Wei wasn't used to spicy food, so after 2 bites, he kept inhaling, fanning himself with his hands, and muttering, "So spicy, eat more rice. I've asked the kitchen to use less chili, but if you don't use any, it won't taste the same," Locke said, taking a bite of the newly served Kung Pao chicken and placing it in Tang Wei's bowl. After dinner, while the restaurant wasn't crowded, Locke chatted with the owner for a while, only to discover that he was also the restaurant's head chef. He also mentioned his 10-year-old daughter, saying she was incredibly motivated, excelling in math and successfully transferring to private school. He also said that if possible, he'd like her to study economics. Economics-related majors are extremely popular in the U.S. Like lawyers and doctors, who represent the middle class, they offer high salaries and a lot of prestige. Unfortunately, she's Chinese, and a girl at that. Locke suspects that even if she gets into a top university, her career path will be limited. Of course, even becoming a middle manager at a large company offers more prospects than running a restaurant. Most Chinese in the U.S. live a modest life, with low social status and facing severe limitations. Those who are better off can only open Chinese restaurants, laundromats, or print shops. By comparison, becoming a middle manager at a large company offers both prestige and a higher income. Locke responded to his boss's expectations with a few pleasantries. In the past 2 years, more and more Chinese have arrived in the United States, and some of them, including the Chinese, have even exploited the recent arrivals. The practice of exploiting the familiar is not uncommon across all ethnic groups worldwide. Seeing Locke's fondness for authentic Chinese food, Tang Wei casually remarked, "My cooking is pretty good, too. It's just that the apartment isn't suitable for Chinese cuisine, which is so fumey. If you want more freedom, you can only go to the suburbs," Locke said. "Actually, I bought a single-family house in Fairview. If you have time, we can go over there and try your cooking, no problem. My ancestors were great chefs, and I've learned a lot since I was a kid. I guarantee you'll eat your tongue," Tang Wei said confidently. Shortly after lunch, Tang Wei received a call, and the two drove back to the consulting firm. The salesperson thought Locke was being taken advantage of by taking on millions of dollars in debt for a financial license. While such a license is difficult for financial firms outside the United States to obtain, even small-scale Wall Street firms generally have one, provided they complete the necessary paperwork. Furthermore, competition on Wall Street is fierce. Even when the market isn't crashing, companies still go bankrupt from time to time. The overall financial sector is currently mediocre, and the shadow of the crash a few years ago still lingers, causing many investors to be reluctant to invest. Wall Street is currently experiencing a cash crunch. Rather than immediately contact a consulting firm, Locke first booked an appointment with an accounting firm. After all, Locke couldn't completely trust the information provided by the consulting firm. He would definitely conduct a review before signing a contract, and even in the initial stages of acquiring the company. After leaving the accounting firm, he met up with Robert from the consulting firm again. This time, he presented the profiles of 3 selected companies, each with the latest relevant information and developments. Most fund companies have struggled in recent years. The stock market crash a few years ago wiped out nearly all of them, leaving mainstream investors feeling uneasy. However, a few who didn't invest in the stock market are still managing to get by. Before the crash, there were plenty of investors, making their money by collecting management fees and commissions, a near-zero-cost business. Here are the 3 most suitable companies we've picked out for you. Take a look. If you're not satisfied, give me some time. I'll definitely find a suitable one at a price you'll be satisfied with, Locke nodded. As per his requirements, the fund company he was considering acquiring, in addition to possessing full licenses, ideally had existing office space and a small number of highly skilled and capable employees. This wasn't difficult. In fact, in the years following the crash, the industry was in a slump. Related companies were either bankrupt or downsizing, leaving unemployed people with various certificates everywhere. Without strong skills, it would be impossible to survive in the industry today. Locke actually set up the fund company for 2 reasons. First, to more conveniently manage his own assets. Second, to raise funds and profit from other people's money. He quickly flipped through the information of the 3 companies and became interested in one. This fund company not only has no debt, but also manages $7 million in assets. Especially since the market seems to be turning around, why is it being sold? Chapter 50 Acquisition. A careful review of Sky Fund's profile reveals its operations to be mediocre, with a small scale, just one of the many micro-fund firms on Wall Street. However, compared to other companies burdened with debt and on the verge of bankruptcy, if managed well, it could still manage to survive. It possesses all necessary licenses and even managed over $80 million in funds. The financial industry was struggling due to the stock market crash a few years ago, but with the fall of the polar bear, the United States has become the world's sole superpower, embarking on a path of global wealth creation. It's safe to say that the U.S. financial industry is currently at a turning point, and many industry insiders can see this, so they won't sell their companies unless they truly can't survive. There are numerous fund companies on Wall Street, and many that meet Locke's requirements. The 3 companies that Mr. Robert had provided Locke with information on had been carefully selected. When Locke asked, he explained, "This company is indeed good. It performed well in the past few years. Its founder, Mr. Andrew, was once a finance professor at Columbia University. Later, Mr. Andrew resigned and founded Sky Fund. The market was good at the time, and he made a lot of money. But then the stock market crashed, and the fund Mr. Andrew managed suffered a significant loss. That's fine, after all, the fund's losses weren't his own, and he still made millions. But Mr. Andrew's new wife and son are big spenders, especially last year, when his son was implicated in a murder case. To exonerate his son and pay the hefty bail, Mr. Andrew spent a fortune. Meanwhile, his third wife, a model, is divorcing him, and she's also taking a large share of his money. Mr. Andrew has been forced to divest most of his assets. Now, besides his house, he only has this company left, and there are still various expenses to pay." "Okay, I think I understand," Locke nodded. Mr. Andrew's financial situation had clearly deteriorated due to family problems, a not uncommon occurrence in the United States. The company certainly met Locke's requirements. It wasn't large, but relatively well established, not a quack operation run by just 1 or 2 people. With such a ready-made framework, Locke could integrate the company more quickly. This ready-made platform would save him considerable time. He carefully reviewed Sky Fund's financial reports. After the stock market crash a few years ago, major clients began withdrawing their investments. Mr. Andrew, after much hustle and bustle, had barely managed to secure a little over $20 million. But the situation didn't improve in the following years. Finding willing investors became increasingly difficult, and more investors were withdrawing their investments upon maturity. Of the $7 million in the account, over $4 million was about to be liquidated and transferred to investors' accounts. The remainder belonged to the same investor, who had only 6 months left before liquidation. Since last year, the company had barely attracted a single dollar in investment. Clearly, after his family's major problems, Mr. Andrew had lost the time and energy to seriously manage his company, accelerating its decline. Before this, Locke had extensive exposure to financial data, and with just a glance at these financial reports, he could quickly spot any issues. As a boss, while he might not need to personally manage specific matters, if he couldn't understand the financial reports, couldn't understand the company's situation, or identify any issues, he would inevitably end up being a victim. It was safe to say that Sky Fund was nearing bankruptcy. With just over $700 million in funds belonging to investors, Sky Fund itself had no funds left. Fortunately, it had no debts, and only about $100,000 in unpaid employee salaries remained. After reviewing all the company's information, Locke shook his head and sighed. What a shame. If they could hold on a little longer and secure new funding, there'd still be hope for a turnaround. Apparently, Mr. Andrew doesn't have the energy for that right now. This company is indeed very good. It has little debt, and the employees, licenses, and office space are all in place. Once the paperwork is completed, it'll be operational. I just confirmed that their office lease expires in 3 months, and the building is less than a 10-minute walk from here. Why don't we go check it out? We can call Mr. Andrew right now. Last week he lowered his asking price to $1 million. It's true, running a fund company that's lost credibility with investors isn't easy, Locke casually replied, glancing at the information. Salesman Robert agreed, but inwardly, he thought, just another rich kid with unrealistic ambitions. There are plenty of such naive individuals every year, and almost all of them are forced to return home in disgrace, enduring the pain of inheriting the family fortune. After reviewing the documents, Locke didn't make a decision immediately. Instead, he began to nitpick. Isn't the $1 million figure a bit high? The documents say there's less than $2,000 left in the company's account, Robert explained. That's true, but it also includes office supplies like computers, desks, printers, and the office lease. Mr. Andrew also holds a stake in Time Warner through a fund, currently worth around $700,000, but they still owe him $100,000 in employee wages. If I'm not satisfied with them, I'll have to spend another fortune to fire them. Perhaps we can talk to Mr. Andrew this afternoon. Believe me, $1 million isn't his limit. Okay, it might seem like only a few $100,000, but I don't want to be taken advantage of, Locke said. You know, at my age, everyone on Wall Street thinks I'm easy to fool. After hearing Locke's words, salesman Robert maintained a professional smile and a respectful demeanor, not giving the slightest sign that he was one of the people Locke claimed was trying to scam him. Throughout the conversation, Tang Wei sat obediently beside him, sipping tea and listening patiently, seemingly eager to learn something. With Locke's permission, Mr. Robert contacted Sky Fund. Locke stayed in his office for another 20 minutes, chatting casually before leaving and heading to the building where Sky Fund was located. Sky Fund's office space was small, approximately 150 square meters. Mr. Andrew and the company's staff were waiting there. Mr. Andrew looked to be in his 50s and was meticulously dressed, but he could still see his fatigue, likely due to his family situation. After the two sides exchanged greetings, Robert took the initiative and began bargaining with Andrew. His arguments were largely based on the fact that assets like desks and computers were worthless, that the office lease was a waste and would decline over time, and that there were also unpaid employee salaries. Finally, he offered a price of only $850,000, including stock, and requested Mr. Andrew's cooperation in the transfer and handover procedures. Perhaps eager to sell the company, after a brief negotiation, Mr. Andrew agreed to the price. The purchase price was to be paid in 3 installments, the first installment of $100,000, followed by another $200,000 after the transfer of ownership. The remaining $550,000 would arrive 1 month after the transfer. During this time, the company needed to pass an audit by the accounting firm to ensure that it had no liabilities or other issues beyond the information provided by Andrew. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.